Okay. Good. Yeah. We're going. Let's do it. Okay, it being 6 o'clock, I would call the meeting of the RMLD Board of Commissioners to order. Yeah,
And yes, I will call the Citizen Advisory Board to order.
okay. Is there any public comment? Particularly,
One more person is joining.
no? Okay. No public comment? Okay.
It's like Liz, her is still connecting to audio.
Well, if Liz has something to say, then, maybe let me know. Okay. Otherwise, why don't we move on to comments from the liaisons? Do we have any liaisons from the boards here? I don't think so. Okay.
And
And-
another public.
So want to go forward with
Okay, Jason, you want to read the motion for meeting minutes?
Move that the RMLD Citizens Advisory Board approve the April 18th, 2024 and April 30th, 2024 open session meeting minutes as presented on the recommendation of the general manager and the board secretary.
second.
Okay, and vote.
Aye.
Aye. That's all present. All right, so I move the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve the April 18th, 2024 minutes and the April 30, 2020 open session meeting minutes as presented on the recommendation and the board secretary.
Second.
Okay, just a comment.
Yep.
I reviewed both these. One of the things I have suggested to Erica is, right now we list separately the CAB and then we list separately the RMLD. I think it may be a lot better if we just list them all as one set of minutes, because it's the same thing. I mean, Jason looked at it first and then got his comments to me, and then I incorporated that and made my final comments.
Oh, for joint meetings, you mean?
Yeah,
Oh, I see what you mean.
we should
Yeah.
just do one set of minutes instead of having two sets. Because right now it's the same, both sets of minutes are the exact same
Oh, yeah,
thing.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well,
Exact same thing.
yeah. Yeah, and to the extent that we continue with joint meetings and that the agendas are identical,
Right.
then that makes sense. There might be times when the agendas are not identical. So
I agree.
yeah, going
Right.
forward, we need to think about, are we always having joint meetings? So the agenda is always exactly the same, because there could be things that we're doing that you're not, or vice versa.
Right. Yeah.
But that's it. But yes.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, my only change was I think at one point Pam's name got spelled wrong.
That's not the first.
That's how many times. Probably not right. The real question.
Part, they got Good catch.
So wait, we did motion second. We didn't vote on the minutes, right?
We did not. vote.
Okay, so all in favor? Any other comments? Approve the minutes, 5-0.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And now, Megan for a load management update.
I don't know who else is on the meeting. I don't know if anybody. Does you want to go back to everyone's on mute? Well, that's
Where'd she go?
they have.
Yeah,
I don't
they
know.
were
I don't know who they are. They're supposed to identify.
Oh, yes.
Turn the presentation.
Anybody in that. Then if they can't identify themselves and they're in the meeting, right? They're supposed to, I don't know who.
Oh. Well, they're allowed to be in the meeting, right? I mean, it's a public meeting,
Have to identify themselves.
it's an open meeting, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought you had to
But
identify.
if they comment, they have to identify themselves.
If they comment, they would, but if they wanted to be there watching, because they're trying to get to sleep or whatever. then they could do that.
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
I have one person in the waiting room. I'm gonna admit them. I think it might be Karen.
So the context for this, Megan's the new director of IRD. She's been with us since February. We've been talking about load management, demand response type programs. So she's going to bring us up to speed on some of the things that the RMLD team is working on.
Thank you. Good evening. Good to see you all again. Today I'm going to talk about three main things. One is the changes I'm making to the residential incentive programs that includes the regular appliances and,
Megan, you might want to put them
Oh, is it
mic a
too-
little closer. I'm not sure. Yeah.
oh, okay. Oh, that's better. Okay, I'll start all over. I'm gonna talk about three things. One is the changes to the residential incentive programs. There are two pieces to it. One is the regular appliances and equipment. The other piece is heat pump. I'll also talk about a demand response program that we're going to start with MWIC. And then I'll talk a little bit about what's in the pipeline in terms of residential sector and the CNI sector. So, okay, yeah. So for the residential incentive program, this is the current status. I'm excluding heat pump here because you just to keep in mind that I'm going to talk about heat pump later. Currently, we provide rebates to 25 types of appliances, like fridges, dryers, washers, I don't know, humidifiers, ranges, different things, and yard tools. And then we added EV chargers a few years ago. And so we did some analysis. In the past 3 years, we issued $390,000 to over 2,000 residential customers. And we also tracked the sort of the turnaround time from the time when the customers apply for rebates and then by the time the rebates are issued. We use a vendor platform, so they go on a different site to go through the whole application process. And the average process time was 70 days, which is pretty long. So we are planning these changes. One is to eliminate rebates for most common products. And then we're keeping rebates for 6 products right now: EV chargers, electric panels, electric snow blowers, Energy Star certified electric ranges, Energy Star certified wireless thermostats, and then Municipal LED holiday lights. We are also in the process of, I hope it will be successful, that we're trying to change from a vendor platform to an in-house processing to shorten the processing time. And the reason behind that, we did a lot of analysis, data collection, and discussion. So it comes down to two things. One is, I think these appliance incentives have been going on for many, many years. The intent of an incentive is to incentivize. It's like customers many, many years ago, they were not inclined to choose a energy efficient appliance or equipment. So we gave them a rebate to lower the cost. And at the time on the market, these more efficient appliances may be more expensive because they're new. So that's the point of the incentive. After all these years, the product market has changed. So for a lot of the appliances, if you go to Home Depot, most of the appliances are Energy Star certified anyway. And a lot of the yard equipment, most of them are electric already. So the conversion to go over that hump already happened. That's the main motivation for us. And the other piece I didn't include it here is now the new thing, the new wave is heat pump and EV. So we're trying to, we only have a limited amount of budget for energy efficiency incentives. So we want to concentrate our funds into the more needed equipment, which is heat pump and EV chargers.
Megan, on the
Yes.
appliances, have you considered maintaining a rebate for a clothes dryer gas to electric conversion?
We did that analysis. Most of the dryers are also electric and also efficient.
Right,
Like,
but if you've got an existing gas, then that would be a significant investment for a homeowner to convert to electric. So it may be worthwhile
well,
maintaining.
they would save a lot of money on when you use the fuel because you paying electricity versus paying for natural gas. So I'm not sure. Like if they're most people, they would buy a new thing is when their old thing dies.
Right.
So-
If you had an existing gas, you would probably be inclined to replace it with the gas.
Mhm.
But if you wanted to move away from the fossil fuel, then you've got an electrical outlet to install, the 30 amp, two-phase or.
Yeah, we had this debate conversation many times. So one thought is, okay, for example, yard equipment, a lot of them are still gas powered.
Yep.
But you know, when you look at the kind of the consumer behavior, when you go to the store, what do they buy? They buy electric. And I mentioned here a little bit like some customers received multiple rebates. It's not that that's not right because that's how the program is set up. They can do it for different equipment, but they do the same thing, but they got one rebate for another. So the reason I'm saying the free ridership, it's a very common phenomenon in the energy efficiency world. It means someone is gonna buy it anyway, and then you give them extra money
Right.
for something that they are already doing.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Ken, I think your point, we focus primarily on electric to electric, and right now there's only one, I say there's only one choice. They're all high efficiency. But I think we'll just take one more look at
Mhm.
any natural gas conversions, particularly.
Because, right, it's not the cost of the appliance.
That's a
it's the
different
cost of
scenario.
The installation.
Yeah, so we'll go back and look at the natural gas to electric conversion. We're trying to basically clean up, as you mentioned, the free ridership piece. And we're trying to encourage different behavior, and now the behavior is all the same, but I think you're right. We'll take a look at natural gas conversions. That's good.
So on the breakdown of the $390,000, basically, how much was appliances versus yard equipment, right? Yard
I-
equipment is still a desire to own gas powered lawn equipment for a lot of people, right? By battery powered, it's gonna last 5 years. I gotta replace the battery in 5 years. I gotta start all over again. So yard equipment is a much different ballgame than an appliance, right? Appliances, you know, can last 10 plus years, maybe hopefully, right? But a lawn equipment, a battery life on a heavily used discharged battery is a lot more consuming. So that will die. So I don't know what the percentage is in the $390,000, how much are appliances. I understand the appliances side,
Yeah.
but on the yard equipment side, that's where I'm kind of.
So there's the
Yeah.
hand yard tools, you know, the trimmers. and
Trimmers,
the-
mowers,
all that.
everything.
Well,
lawn,
the
electric.
trimmers and mowers, so we need, the area where there's still a significant amount of gas powered available is in the snow blower. As we started looking at the hand-based tools, almost 90%, or, I mean, if you go in Home Depot or Lowe's, whatever, you're gonna end up buying electric. Just because that's primarily what's available, unless you're a purist and you really want the backpack. Yeah, and
On the backpack.
I'm with you.
I
get it.
Yeah,
I get it. But on the lawnmowers, most of the lawnmower, if you look at, you know,
Yeah, you go down.
distribution of lawnmowers, it's, you know, there's 12 different electrics and there's 2 gas.
Yep.
So there's gonna be the purist, and I say purist, they're gonna be they're gonna be the ones that want to stick with natural gas, gasoline. But on the one place, to exactly your point, the one place that we did not, that we held the rebate on was the snow blower.
Snow blowers.
Cause we'll see how fast that goes. Snow blowers has a whole different.
It's been a while since I've looked at lawnmowers. Was that just push mowers or like that, or even the
Yeah.
riding? The riding ones?
Riders,
Even
these
the,
are these triple pack, I mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've
I
seen,
just-
we've seen residential customers buying a heavy duty, almost like commercial grade mower and then get a rebate for it, which really is not a good incentive.
Well, I just, on the lawn equipment, was kind of curious at how much of that is.
Yeah, I can
You know,
definitely buy that.
because the appliances, you know, are gonna be $1,000, right? So it's gonna be hefty, but, you know, small stuff, okay, but, you know, a ride along mower is gonna be somewhat similar. So if you had a choice between a gas or an electric, you know, it might be an incentive still on that side of the house. What is LED municipal lighting? Is it
I think
is it
it's-
ready? Or is it like,
It's- So every year, so this is part of the whole. I made a run at this when I first got here. We should leave it in place. It is basically, we rebate up to $500 a year to each of the towns for them to buy LED lights and use it for their holiday display. And every year, we get 4 applications in and we.
Yep, okay, yep,
It's
okay.
part of the
I
program,
just
so
checking that.
It's good PR.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I'm with you on that one.
Conversation.
Where do air conditioners stand in this change?
Air conditioners were not part of the program. To
They
be
used to be. I remember I got,
Oh,
speaking of free rider, I mean, I probably got $50 for buying a window AC a bunch of years ago. Is that
congratulations.
gone or is that still there?
It's not there.
It's gone. But is there,
The last 3 years, no.
okay, but is there any consideration to incentivizing the high SEER, like the 14 or 18 or whatever the number is? Like if you walk into Home Depot, it's 10 or 11.
Mm.
And it would cost a lot more to get whatever the number is, 18, like double.
Get a
heat
pump.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's.
You're right. I mean, you're absolutely right.
Heat pump's $15,000, right? And
But-
a window AC unit's $1,000.
That's the thing.
Right,
People are
that's-
walking into Home Depot and I'm always struck by the
I'll
stacks.
give
of
you an
10 seer,
example.
You know, sitting in Home Depot and people are walking out of them every hot day.
I'll give you an example. A customer, new house, new heating and cooling system, he used propane. Then he discovered his little basement doesn't have the equipment. So he went to Home Depot, bought a $4,000 heat pump. And then he asked for a rebate. We give them $3,000 based on the rules of the program.
Mr. Cool.
So it's not really, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not really helping to electrify. It's
That's an outlier.
It is an
But-
outlier.
That's an
Yeah.
outlier. That's not that, you know, okay, someone got a good deal. Okay, that's an
installed.
outlier. That's not the majority, right?
Well, to Ken's point, I would like to see a rebate where we offset gas dryers. There is no energy efficiency on dryers. Dryers are not energy efficient. Your efficiency of a dryer is how much water you can wring out of your
Yeah.
clothes before you put it in the dryer, which is why you get energy efficiency on washers. You don't get an Energy Star rating on dryers because sort of by definition, they're not energy efficient.
Right.
But I think supporting the conversion away from gas, as Ken has suggested, I would say, that would be a good place to support that.
we definitely had similar discussion on ranges. And then one thing is to ask the customer to verify that you are actually replacing a gas fueled equipment. And it's logistically, it's difficult.
Yeah.
But we'll look into that. Yeah, to ask them to take a picture and then when was that picture taken? Where was it taken? When you get to the details of the program, it just gets wild.
One thing we did mention before was basically timers on water heaters. Right, electric water heaters, the efficiency of a water heater. That should be included in the program because if you just have a water heater, it's just gonna heat, stop, heat, stop, heat, stop. But it controls manage the time that it's heating.
Yeah, we have incentives for water heaters. I don't think we split one out specifically for timers,
No.
but we'll look at that as well. Good feedback.
All right, so the other kind of reason to make the changes is in-house is to reduce the processing time. We don't know if it's gonna pan out. We'll have a lot of, cybersecurity issues. If we do it in-house, we're still kind of exploring that.
What is it about the third party process that takes so long?
So when customers use that online application form, they often don't know how to fill it out. And then there's a lot of back and forth. Oh, where do I upload the picture? You have to show a picture of Energy Star, that yellow tag. And sometimes it's missing information. And then sometimes, it's because it's a vendor, it's kind of out of our control. That kind of slows down. It's not entirely because of the vendor, but that adds an actual layer where the customers are not familiar with. So it creates, and then it's like a three-party conversation, and customers calls us, but then it's a platform that we don't control. So that kind of back and forth takes some time.
And just one further note on the verification issue you raised for like a gas to electric range or a gas to electric dryer.
Yeah.
The incentive is not for the appliance, it's for the installation. So you've got you would have only, the rebate would apply to an electrician's invoice for the installation.
We are not allowed to do that, I don't think, for
I think,
labor.
no, I think we can still do it on the device, but if somebody's got, so to do your natural gas to electric, they'd have to do, the electrician would have to do work, they pull a UAN number, and so we might be able to key it up with the UAN. So there's actually, we might be able
To know that
yes,
actually
because the
happening.
electrician did it, if we wouldn't necessarily do a DUI, we could possibly put in because of the verification.
Yeah.
That might be a nice avenue for that, so good, right.
Me
and that's a-
too.
yeah.
Yep. Any other questions?
Do you think there'll be any PR blowback from customers saying, you know, hey, wait a minute, why don't you do this anymore? Just, you know,
Yeah.
out of curiosity, hey, my mother got it, why can't I? That's
So we are hoping to launch this in January. So in the fall, we're gonna do a lot of marketing efforts to tell people this is happening. If you still want to get these rebates, do it now. So they will have 4 months. I expect a surge a little bit.
And I think the other element is just to reinforce the purpose of the incentives. It is to promote a different behavior. And now that behavior is pretty established, you know, what other behavior do we start focusing on?
right, because customers may call you, and I didn't know.
Oh,
if
they
you
will.
have
Yeah, they will.
An answer already.
And it's a rate issue at the end of the day. I mean, that they're paying for that incentive, so you can hold,
Customer money.
so you can hold the line on that.
Ultimately, we're not, the objective is not to cut back on rebate amounts. The objective is to redistribute that rebate
Yes,
budget.
it
towards
is.
More
Right.
efficient
And if
options.
people
and more
understand,
impactful.
then that would be.
Yeah, that'll be part of
that.
that.
I think that's
And we have some
a
marketing.
really
much
clear
more
part
marketing.
of the messaging.
Yes.
Good prompt.
You're fully electrifying this, hopefully will actually be better for you. Just getting $40 a leaf blower.
I'm gonna move to heat pump. So currently, our heat pump rebate is 1,000 per ton, up to 6,000. The past 2 years, we issued $1.4 million to over 400 customers. And the average is about $3,000 to $3,500. The second point is what I was trying to say, like, I think what we really want to incentivize to do a whole house heating cooling system replacement, but currently only a quarter of the rebates that we give are doing whole house. And then the good news is that this last point, most of the customers, because it really makes economic sense. So 80% of the customers are partially replacing their oil.
No, that's the cheaper one. Would have the, not that at all, that have the some stuck.
There you go.
I would,
Somebody needs to be muted.
To have my
I'd like,
Where'd that come from?
Nobody does.
There was a member of the public, I believe, who wished to comment.
They should identify themselves, you know? Ask them to identify themselves. They're gonna
Before they babble.
So we're planning, the changes we're planning for heat pump rebate is one, currently, weatherization is an option. It's like we encourage them to do, but this is the common practice in for the bigger companies already. They require weatherization, which totally makes sense because you don't want to install a heat pump to a leaky house. So that's what we're gonna add to the requirement. We're also considering increasing the rebate. We don't know how yet, so we'll think about that. And the other big piece of change is to have much higher incentive for whole house heat pump installation. So $10,000, we're not gonna do per ton anymore, because I think even right now, in our territory, the average tonnage that's needed for the whole house is actually only about 4, give or take. So, but the total price of installing that system is about 25,000 to 35,000. So if we provide 10,000, that's a pretty good cash incentive. And then an alternative to that, we're also talking with the Reading Cooperative Bank to have a 0 interest loan. And so RMLD will pay the interest on that loan, and then the bank will deal with the customers in terms of the rest of the loan. So the customer, it's a choice. It's either you pay cash upfront and you get cash upfront, or you don't want to do that. You don't have that 10 to 15,000 upfront. Then you kind of stretch out 3 to 5 or 7 years to pay that $25,000 to $35,000. So it's really a choice. So we want the two choices to be equitable, so that they make their decision based on their own situation. And then the last one is more like someone.
budget fish last. Go ahead.
Oh, that's just, the manual J is more of a technical assessment for the heating needs, because we're in a cold climate environment. So that is pretty important for the whole house replacement. So we want that to be the requirement instead of the option.
Just a few items, the technology of the whole house heat pump isn't quite there for forced air. Right? So for forced air, you got a forced air system
Oh, forced there. Yeah. got it.
and you
Yeah.
try to, most people have forced air. You try to get the technology, you try to get the heat pump. That's not quite there. You
No,
can
I
stand alone.
disagree.
Let you know.
I looked at it.
I've done 2 houses, forced hot air system with heat pumps.
I tried to do mine and it was way too expensive for me to do it. Right? So I
Well,
didn't do it.
you're making an economic decision. The question is
Oh,
the technology.
yeah,
They've got 2 houses that have
absolutely.
converted.
And it was, even the guy he was talking to was like, yeah, you can do this, or you can do 2 independent units, which he thought was more efficient, right? So my point
Yeah,
being.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
My point being here, you're talking about whole house, right? So that we're moving to a whole house system. Even if I did a portion of my house, I'm still accomplishing the goal, right, of reducing, my energy consumption on fossil fuels. I just think moving towards whole house or nothing
That's
isn't
not
the
what we're
right.
saying.
Well, that's
Yeah, we're not,
okay. That's what I'm reading.
we're not,
Sorry,
yeah, we're not taking away the
the
person.
regular.
Yeah, we're trying to create additional incentive to do whole house.
So we're not eliminating the current
Oh,
incentive.
I thought this was.
Yeah, this is the
okay.
change.
I
Yeah,
thought
we're
it
at-
was- It's an and.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. I thought this was, no, we're shifting from this to this.
But you
But
do,
then the other comment, with $10,000, that's great. You can incentivize on the other end per ton to kind of equate to that same value, but zero interest on a loan, we're paying the loan at at what interest rate and for what period of time, things are 10% or whatever. That could be a monumental amount of cash.
so on that exact note, the structure we're working right now is to make the 2 roughly the same for a comparable system. And so, as Megan mentioned, we'd basically be prepaying the interest. And so we're working through, so we've had several discussions with one of the local banks. Once we get that kind of figured out, we're work through the rest of them. We're trying to learn what Mass Save has already done. E&E, you guys remember, Ben Ragucci was here back in the springtime. He walked through a program that was state sponsored. So at the end of the day, the intention is still to have it be comparable, as Megan mentioned. The choice between either you can take the rebate or you can take a 0 interest loan. And the numbers we're looking at right now is to try and make those 2 numbers the same, roughly, in terms of dollars per system installed, and make it just easier for the customer to choose A or B. And from our perspective, it's 6s. That's what we're trying to. That's the intention behind it. But you do bring up a good point, Bob, and we got to make note of this. So when you think about a whole house, it doesn't have to be a single hyper system. It can be multiple
Exactly.
systems. Yeah. So
It's to cover the heating, cooling needs of the whole house. It doesn't have to be one single
as
system.
an additional option.
Yeah, no, then the IOUs do cover the cost of weatherization, where,
We do too.
well,
Yeah.
up to some extent, right?
25.
So we're not, again, we don't collect quite as much money as an IOU, right? And so we don't pay quite as much incentives, but we put the weatherization program in as a pilot last year. It's working pretty well. So we're looking at, do we change the amount of it? We probably won't change what's covered. We're doing primarily insulation and air sealing. But the second element here is that we wanted for air source heat pump system as opposed to make it optional, make it a requirement. That's the second piece we're looking at as well. But weatherization, weatherizations, they are the fastest turnaround, the fastest payback program you could possibly do. Nevertheless, people still would like to have an incentive to encourage them to do it. So that's why I put it in place last year. Other comments, questions?
Does the whole house system require that the homeowner decommission their fossil fuel system? I think that's a mass save requirement.
It is a mass save requirement.
Yeah, even so, I don't know if DEP's upcoming clean heat standard is discussed at meetings like this before, but even for them, that's not a requirement. It's a self-certification that they won't use it unless it's absolutely necessary, because I think sometimes you have to prepare for the emergency. So a lot of households will keep the system as a backup.
I mean,
That's our current thought process.
Yeah,
As opposed to mandate and monitoring.
Yeah, I mean, as a practical matter, I would not want to be without the backup, but,
Yeah, we're looking at customer service and customer relations.
Yeah.
That's a high priority on this one.
yeah, I mean,
But I mean, the backup is a little bit of a myth in terms of, oh, I'm gonna go to electric, but if power goes out, I want to have gas as a
oh, you
backup.
want to back up
But
for.
your
the
gas
0
burner
and 10
is
degree day.
electronic fire. So if you lose
No, yeah,
power, you're
the-
gonna lose heat too.
The backup is for the cold days, and I've
Oh, so you're talking, yeah,
Yeah.
the buffer on the very cold
Yeah.
days. And that's more of a confidence thing than oftentimes.
yeah, I mean, I've got a system, a 2-year-old system that, you know, very high efficiency. It does not keep the house warm when it gets down to 20 degrees. So the boiler
The
starts
whole
running.
house ones have an internal heating element that turns on that will, so you're not using.
Okay,
heat pump anymore, you're
right.
using internal
Okay, so a
heating
whole
element.
house will have
No.
electric resistance.
Have a-
Yeah.
Yeah, resistance
won't-
heating
Okay.
You won't have
supplemental,
that.
right?
Okay,
If you're doing the whole house system, you won't have that.
Okay.
issue.
And you can go ground source and then you don't have the
Yeah.
defrosting element.
That's cost, but that internal heating element literally costs a fortune. So when you run that, you're running.
For those days that you do it. Yep, there's always, I mean, again,
That is
So that's for the 3 days of year when you
great.
might need.
We don't know that. We don't know
Yeah.
that. We could be a 2-week deep freeze. We could be who knows, right?
lots of variabilities.
All right, I'm gonna move on to the demand response program. So we literally this afternoon, we're talking with MWEC to finalize some of the details of,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
you- Can, I didn't realize you were done with that topic. When do we think we'll finalize the details of the program changes?
in the fall, September, October,
Totally.
because we want to have enough time to tell the customers that the changes are coming.
And it will be for systems that they install starting January 1st?
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah. The cutoff date is usually when they apply. So that's when we count as like the application date.
Depending upon what system it is.
But
there's
they,
different triggers
they
for you.
cannot apply until they install the system, so.
Right.
Oh, okay. So for demand response program, we are kind of discussing the agreement. Oh, that's not clicked one more. With MWIC on, so they have a demand response program called Connected Homes. They have a partnership with Virtual Peaker, which is a online platform that would have the capability of directly control a device in someone's home if they agree to participate. So we are basically, when the customer signs up, they will say, I'll connect my device with our Wi-Fi based, right? So then it's connected to Virtual Peaker's platform. And then each month when there's a transmission peak, MWIC will call that peak and then we'll send messages to customers, to participating customers. We say, we're gonna, lower your thermostat, do whatever device they sign up for. We'll do that and to reduce demand. And the customer has the choice to override, to opt out, we call it. And then one of the details we're discussing right now is how many times of opt-out is enough for us to say, hey, you really should not be in this program, so we're not gonna give you an incentive anymore. So that's kind of the gist of how the program would work. I don't know if you have any questions, but basically we're just, one piece I want to talk about the cost effectiveness. The key is really to have high participation rate. The first couple of years, it might be challenging. But if we don't start now, we'll never get there, especially for residential programs. It's just a lot of times you cannot only look at whether it's cost effective for RMLD, but rather like what's the message behind that to change customer behavior. I will talk about the rate design pieces that we're gonna do next year. It's kind of to pave the way for that, because to change customer behavior is probably the most difficult thing in the world, in my mind. So we're trying to implement the program to start this conversation, this educational journey with the customers. And then, yeah, I already said the marketing is the key. I don't know if you have any question for that.
I'm trying in my mind, trying to understand if you are doing heat pumps, you would adjust the set point. I mean, it's not an on-off thing for that. But you could delay the set point a few degrees.
Preheat or pre-cool. also.
Yeah,
Yeah. Easier with EVs because then it's easier to shift that, the charging times.
EVs where the leverage is.
Yeah,
Heat
Yeah.
pumps and furnaces aren't big. They're small loads, but you get enough of them, it could be. That's what it goes back to our point about participation.
yes, speaking of, finish this. I was just gonna say, speaking of EV, this is the other kind of a demand response EV related initiative. They were in discussion with a new tech company called Stepwise. They got some funding from SEC and in partnership with us. We didn't get the funding, we're their partner in terms of our territory is their test bed for this new product. It's called EV Tap. And it's the main function of that is to avoid the cost of upgrading the electric panels if they install a level 2 charger at their home. So that's the first drive. And the second one is they also are developing a kind of a similar, a platform that can kind of modulate the charging and discharging. It's not just stop charging or start charging, but rather modulate the charging to do better demand response. So in terms of like, when you do demand response, if everyone is doing in these hours, and then you preheating, pre-cooling, the peak will shift before that peak period. So modulating will help to really smooth it for a longer period. So this is another program we're trying to implement. And one element of that is potentially to design a new rebate just for load management devices, which can get technical. It's like where's the boundary that you call load management? We don't want customers to go to Home Depot to buy something and then it's called load management. So we have to define that kind of a technical boundary of that. So
For the rebates.
yeah, for the rebate.
One question on the stepwise. Anytime you perform anything on your electrical panel, it's an electrical inspection required.
Exactly.
A lot of times, everything listed in there has to be UL listed.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so this.
They came in and demoed their product. It is UL listed. And also it's not attached to the panel. It's between the panel and the EV charger.
It's a load limiter. It's a current limiter for all intents and purposes. Is UL the new product? But UL, because they just got their UL approval. That was one of the requirements before. And you guys know, we don't endorse products. We don't promote top products. But we're going to create a rate and an incentive. And as part of, again, the key thing is demand response or load management on the residential side. So it's another tool in the portfolio.
So load management device rebate does exist in California. So what we are looking into, like how they define that and maybe adopt some of that.
Learn from others.
So back to the prior page with the connected homes piece, this would be connecting devices that residents purchase themselves, or would this be connected to the meter upgrade plan?
It's their own devices. It's like the so-called bring your own device program. So it could be their own battery, it could be their EV charger. It also includes the EV telematics. So now some OEMs, they can do the control directly on the vehicle instead of through the charger. And it could be thermostat. I'm missing others.
But it's Wi-Fi based. So basically the signal goes out. So when they register the device, they register an IP address. And so then when the signal goes out, it'll alert them. They can choose either email or text. You can opt out. So you opt in to participate in the program. And then when the alert comes, if you want to opt out for whatever reason, you can do that. But the system is automated so that it will send out when the peak comes through, it'll send out an alert to that particular IP address to adjust whatever the adjustment is. Typically on the way the configuration works on thermostats, it's basically a 4 degree increase, whatever it is, where it is currently.
2 to 4.
Yeah, 2 to 4, that's right, 2 to 4. So it's not, yeah, so anyways, but it's all like, it's a touch-free system, and that we're very careful about not going for liability reasons. We don't go into somebody's houses and make all these changes, just like when a heat pump is installed or an EV charger, we do a rebate for it. But we're not owning the equipment, and we will send signals to control the equipment. Bottom line, we have to be very careful of liabilities and endorsements, but that's how it works. Make sense?
All right, so the last piece, I will talk about the pipeline for customer programs. One is, we're in discussion with E&E. They have a pretty established turnkey EV promotion program. So this is more focusing on the vehicles. You know, we're an electric company. We don't have much to do with the vehicles themselves, but so if we use their service to help our customers to understand what is a EV, what does it do, and how do you overcome range anxiety and things like that, how do you get a rebate for your EV and all sorts of things. So that's one. And then the next two is the time of use rate. We are in the final stages of installing the meter data management system. So we are already seeing hourly data for a lot of our customers. So we want to do a cost of service study to understand where the costs are. And then based on that, we're gonna do some redesign. Part of that redesign, in addition to the regular, like to really establish rates, like how to make it more, has a better foundation in terms of cost. The other piece is to do the time of use rate redesign, and to make that a good, smooth transition for customers, we probably will want to do a full year of shadow billing of time of use rate. We're still exploring the feasibility of our current billing system, whether we can add this shadow billing piece, which is basically you still get your regular bill, but it's like side by side is if you were on the time of use rate, how much are you going to be charged? Then they can see during the peak hours, they'll be charged more, and off peak, they'll be charged less. So we want to do that for all 4 seasons, and people get educated, and then we implement the real rate. And then CNI is challenging, but we are moving ahead. Generally, when our team contacts the CNI customers, they do not want to talk to us. They don't want to be bothered. They pay their bill. That's it. So they're less engaged comparatively than the residential customers. Yeah. However, they have the biggest potential of energy efficiency and electrification. So we're doing a lot of analysis and research on what efficiency measures would be helpful for our customers in territory, because if you ever look at the Mass Save's technical resource manual, it's 900 pages with thousands of different equipment and devices and technologies that you could choose from. So we're trying to do that research to help our customers, because if we go to the customer and say just like a blanket statement, oh, you need to do it energy efficiency, where do they start? So we're trying to do that legwork for them, hopefully, to have that conversation. And then we have a peak demand reduction program with the CNI customers. The persistent customers are currently getting credits on their bill, but most of that reduction is passive. It's like during the peak hours, if they happen to have lower usage than the previous hour, then they will get some of the savings. We will share that savings with them. But I think it would be much more helpful if we can have them to do active demand response. But then again, it involves the technical details. Okay, if it's an industrial customer, they need to run their operation maybe 24/7. So when do you ask them, when should they lower their usage? How do they potentially have to change their entire procedure to do that? Is that worth it? So it's a lot of detailed questions that we have to answer before they can do anything. So that's it.
You also mentioned the customer portal.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
There's a lot to that too. Just
Yes,
highlights.
as part of the meter data management project, the vendor is developing a customer portal where they log in through our website, but it goes to the portal and then they can see their daily, hourly usage. They can also sign up for alerts. If their usage is too high, they get an alert. Yep, and they can see their bills, the payment history and all that regular stuff.
So trying to get that released this quarter, well, between now and the end of the year, since we're in August. But that'll have a lot of things we've talked about in the past are, how do you do alerts on a more consistent basis, more broad basis, and so people can sign up for alerts as well. They can look at their performance on a more detailed basis, so a lot more information to the customer. Big focus on that. Great. Any questions for Megan?
Just first, Megan, congratulations on your role as taking over the group.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing more of you as you present progress. Not part of this presentation, I understand, but solar voltaic, we're going to have a presentation on that at some point, or customer?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of, yes. So in terms of in-territory, Gen Solar is the highest priority. Met with the town of Reading yesterday on Parker School, a little bit of follow-up on Killam.
Yes, I do want to have a follow-up on those town ones, but I'm thinking residential solar incentives.
So we are in the process of doing some analysis, like, you look at rooftop, right? It's right now, because our rates is so low, residents don't have incentives to install solar, not as much incentive, because they're not really getting a whole lot of money back for their for the money they put into the solar panels. So one solution that we think of is like, they need to pair it with storage. That way they can actually,
I push back on that only in that you've got an oil-fired burner and you've got a gas car. So if you take your energy demand now, you're going like, oh, that's not much power demand. But if you put a heat pump and an EV car, all of a sudden you're going to find your bill's going to be a lot different than what you might have an economic justification for now.
Yeah.
So no, yes, we have a low rate, and that's
So on that note,
that's desirable as opposed to a higher rate, but I'm not buying that statement.
So we have an existing program in place right now. We've had it in place for years, right? And we changed the incentive. We doubled it for a while, and then we brought it back down recently. We are looking at, what else can we do to encourage the adoption of residential? We're focusing on these other programs. So
my question wasn't so much we answer the question, it's just that when we will get an update on that that's a piece of this puzzle that
it'll be several months down the road.
so I'm curious, because we are actually looking more at the CNI solar than residential solar. So I'm
Understood.
curious about your, maybe thinking about what are we trying to achieve to push residents to install solar. It's definitely a good thing, but
so my concept, if that was a question,
yeah,
is on one hand, we're trying to tell customers, put in electric heat pumps and electric cars. Parallel to that, we ought to say that's a big electric demand. That's going to drive up your electric bill, even at whatever cents per kilowatt we're charging you on whatever demand response curve we're on. But if your house qualifies, then you could put solar panels on and we'll help with that, because we don't want to have to carry all that demand on our grid because we're expecting a huge load to the system. And if your house doesn't qualify, then we are buying a lot of space for solar panels, buy into the solar panels and join the community solar system, and we'll give you credit for that to the degree which you participate in that. Now we've given every customer a chance to have a solar option, whether their house has an optimum arrangement or not. And it's not based on the $100 bill that you're getting. It's based on the $300 or $500 bill you'll be getting when you put those systems in place.
The only thing I'd say to that is, as far as offsetting maybe system improvement on that. Reading would still have to carry the capacity because if a cloud comes over, a storm comes over.
I understand. It's
Solar
not,
aren't working, you still have to have the available capacity on the grid to supply those customers, whether it's solar or not.
understood. It's not perfect. Yeah,
It's not
there's
offset.
still a
It's
balance.
not offsetting Reading's infrastructure.
And not every house is gonna qualify for solar and not every person's gonna opt in, so you'll still be carrying a large quantity of that, but to the extent that you can
Yeah,
manage
there's
some of
so
that.
part of it. So the focus right now is on load management, demand response type stuff. Our solar, our in territory generation initiative is still high priority for all the reasons we've talked about over the past 6 months. Storage is the intermediate solution
Right.
That's in play right now, we've talked about before.
And
But
And
there's,
Jason, that would be storage in the house would be a way to buffer that also. But yes, you're right. The grid has to
But
still
these are
carry
all
that.
systems you're relying on the resident or the customer to maintain and keep in working order. And
there's a whole bunch.
And
Yep.
there's a whole lot that goes into that. And I don't think as an electric utility, you want to take the risk of not being able to supply the load when those things don't work.
Reliability is directive number one. Yeah. So there's a bunch of analysis to do on the trade-offs, but
In my mind, the most important thing that you said was the incentive was one thing and it's gone down.
Yep.
Let's do something soon about getting the incentive back up.
Yeah.
That should be easy. Oh, like,
So
it doesn't make sense for a lot of people to do it anymore, even if they were looking into it before, the loss of that incentive piece is impactful, so.
we'll provide some analysis in terms of yeah, no problem. Got it. Well taken.
great, thanks. And I agree with Ray, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You have to get you a name tag.
Sorry. Is it underneath? It's not. Michael's. So so we're gonna talk about, hedging, power supply, wiring. They're all related and it's a big topic. So we're gonna focus specifically on, the question relative to the thought process behind wiring. Bob and Ken attended the Monday morning session. Ken did a fair amount of analysis over the past couple of days. But as we kind of dug into it, we wanted to, for some of you, back in 2021 and 2022, we did a lot of work on power supply. We fundamentally restructured in the context of 2021 climate bill. And I'll show you a slide here in a second. We fundamentally restructured our power supply portfolio. Support from E&E and a lot of other people. So we were very aggressive on that. And you'll see it's fundamentally restructured and it's in really good shape. There's a lot of changes that we'll walk you through some of the big picture. In a nutshell, the key points I want to get across are going to be pretty straightforward, right? Power supply is foundational to fulfilling our mission. We just talked a minute about reliability, right? Got to make sure we keep the lights on. The mission reliable, low cost, non-carbon. First and foremost, make sure you supply the customers. Power supply strategy is complex. There's a lot of moving parts. There's no one piece of analysis that gives you the answer. Dave, you had it on the Monday morning meeting. There was some analysis. I guess, do you know this? I'll come back on that. We'll get back to the very bottom. Hedging is a form of insurance, and we'll get into the discussion, but it's basically it's insurance against high priced hours or high priced energy. You mentioned, thinking about using base stabilization or fuel. We have a couple of different funds. We actually are using them. We actually use those in the August timeframe to dampen the upward pressure on the August bills. It also is used to help ensure the reliability. That's why we do hedging as well. There's another complex piece that we won't get into. We won't go through all of it. I'm just trying to give you some big picture context, but there's the concepts of intermittent sources versus firm sources. Our nuclear contracts, as we've talked about before, are firm sources. And whether if many of them, even if they're repowering, for example, or if there's a problem, those firm contracts, the supplier has an obligation to provide power from some other source. Intermittent hydro, which we love, wind, which we like a lot, solar, which we also like a lot. Those are intermittent and they're not firm sources. So we have to take that into account in terms of thinking about hedging. LMP, we're going to do some quick definitions. LMP is not a useful analysis in terms of looking at your power supply portfolio. You can do it, but it doesn't tell you a lot. We'll get into that as well.
I'm sorry, LMP.
It's what you call open market. So it's a subset of open market pricing. So we'll do definitions in just a minute.
Well, what is the acronym? What's
Locational marginal price.
okay, thanks.
Locational market price. And there's two categories, two elements, real time and day ahead. The wire wind price is, so for the 2025, it is a very good price relative to the forward price curve. There's another term that we'll talk about very briefly. We're not gonna spend a whole lot of time on it. I'll just give you the big picture pieces. RMLD is currently highly hedged for 2025, right? Known and by design. There are two drivers in terms of when we look at hedging. One is what's our load look like, it's a load forecast, and what's the actual output of, or what's the forecasted output and what's the actual output of the assets. And we'll talk about that more. The example is, if it's a particularly windy season, then you get a lot more wind. If it's a particularly wet season, you get a lot more hydro. And that's what we've experienced over the past 2 years. RMLD and E&E, we're exploring options. So we are hedged, highly hedged, over hedged in springtime. And we are that's called long, and we are short in the summertime. So one of the things that we're working on is how do we take some of those long positions and move those to fill the short positions. The reason why the long positions are advantageous, our long positions are in high priced hours, and I'll show you a chart on that. And we want to replace them with, so they're high value for many customers. We're in good shape because we have plenty of it. We'd like to fill our short position in the summer months. So those are not very valuable. So we're in a good position to be able to do that. The last piece that is important context, the Wirewind project is a 1-year extension. There are no new hydro facilities being built in New England. We were very aggressive in 2021 and 2022 to secure and contract numerous hydro facilities. There are no more. So if we pass on, if we don't contract this Wirewind, there are other MLPs that are not as strong in hydro that will pick it up. We will never, well, never's a long time. It'll be unlikely that we'll ever get back. So when we think about this extension of Wirewind in particular, we are basically buying an option to buy another year to see how things play out. Those are the big pieces. Presentation. So real quick, I share this all the time. I drive it into the organization. I use it as a reference to how we think about how we run this business. It's a great framework. Reliable, low cost, non-carbon, in that order. That is our power supply portfolio. If you look to the left, that's 2021. And if you look just a few years to the right, you see 23, 24, 25. Massive, the blue is hydro, a massive change in pink, which is nuclear. You can see also the yellow, massive change in terms of the yellow as well. So a lot of changes that went through the structure. You can't quite read it under there, but that basically says is that the ISO market structure is designed to encourage sellers. Those are the generators. And you just yeah, I did that. Go back, yeah. To contract long-term to avoid low LMP prices, and it's designed to encourage buyers like RMLD to avoid high LMP prices. I'll talk about definitions here in just a minute. I'm not going to go through all these details. When we think about factors driving power supply contracts, there's a bunch of different pieces. Load forecast is the first key piece, right? And so when you think about how hedged you are, it's what portion are you filling versus where you think the load is going to be. The load changes. It's very dynamic load. If it's a particularly dry, hot summer, the load is more significant than if it's cool. So remember, 2023 was a very mild temperature. So load was actually lower in 2023 than it was in 2022. In 2024, year to date, we are about 4% higher than we were in 2023. So when you think about hedging, there's one variable, which is the load, and then there's the other variable, which is the actual production of these intermittent resources. So on that right-hand side, it says, again, I'm going to try and be quickly through this. There are factors which are the forward price curve, not LMP prices, forward price curve, the location of that generation asset and the production. P50 basically means 50% likely, what's the most likely output of the system? Intermittent resources, solar, wind, hydro in particular, are variable. They change somewhat dramatically depending upon the weather conditions. Those are key pieces that go into it. So the key economic factors, that second thing, forward price curve. The second thing is what's the production and then where it's located. Other factor on existings is, are there challenges in terms of repowering the asset? Are there license renewals? What's the age of the unit? What's the maintainability, et cetera? New resources, I won't go through all those, but there are a whole bunch of factors on new resources. We have experienced directly several of the projects that we contracted in the past 2 years aren't going to get built. So we have to think about that in our structure as well. In terms of the broad risk consideration, we've talked about this before. We have a very broad-based, diverse portfolio, and the intention is to basically manage risk, manage any concentration of risk. And risk is the type of the asset, the location of the asset, who the vendor is, is in the same watershed, is it on the same transmission line? So these are all factors that we get into. I'll come back to that in a second. Important definitions. Forward price curve is basically what the industry thinks the price of energy is going to be in the next up to 5 years out, right? On a monthly basis. Fair statement?
Yeah, that's financially, and then fundamentally, we go out even further than that. We go out to 20 years.
20 years. LNP is locational marginal price. And that is, and it's calculated by ISO New England, and it is what the real time is what the price is every 5 minutes. So if you go and look at the ISO New England app, that's a location, that's a real time. And then on the same app, what's the price going to be for that hour tomorrow? So, that's the time horizon is literally, 24 hours down the road. It's useful data for us, but it doesn't drive power supply. And I don't, Dave, I don't know the source of the analysis that you gave. And I don't know what the source of the analysis is. We could not replicate this. So this $1 million number, I don't know if you could share the data with us.
I mentioned in there that after asking you for your financial analysis that underpinned the wire wind recommendation and not getting it, I did reach out to the former IRD director, and he did some calculations. And
did he share that with you?
Yeah, that's what that's from, and I said it right there in the memo. That's where it's from.
Great.
And I'd love to have you give corrected or better or numbers, but
well, I don't know how it was created. So we between E&E and us, we tried to recreate it, and we couldn't recreate this.
And you don't have that ISO New England is having to sort of resell or get rid of power that RMLD contracted for and then sell it, and at whatever price the market will bear. You don't have that data, or you say that's incorrect?
We do have the. Well, go ahead.
I mean, everybody that participates in the pool is buying and selling all the time, right? Mostly at losses. If you're a supplier or a generator, because you're balancing out your system, right? You have two moving targets, supply and load, that's always moving. So you're always doing a little bit of buying and selling. We have the data. We haven't had time to really study it well. That's frankly not something we look at a lot because it's in the past, and we know going in that we're going to have some wins and we're going to have some losses typically.
Sure.
And I did take a quick look at it. It looked, about right, but it didn't have like.
Well, no, these numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
these numbers can replicate, but
Yeah,
we went back and looked at the weekly
Yeah.
load forecast. So we had estimated back in September of 2023. So we got a weekly forecast of every week we get analysis of what for the next 5 years, what the monthly cost is going to be hedged and unhedged. So in September, literally every week, it's called an E&E weekly. September, October, we estimated in 2024 back then, not knowing fully what the actual load or production was going to be, but it would be about $400,000 that we'd end up selling back into the grid during those 3 months. We looked at the 21st of August, so literally 2 days ago, it's 408. So it was 400, 392, 408. So that's our estimate in terms of what we sold back into it.
That's so, but what I was told is that these are the net losses at the ISO New England settlement of what we paid versus what the power was purchased for at that moment.
So I'm showing you real data, David. I can't replicate this
You
data.
say
I don't
it's
have this data.
You say it's inaccurate.
I'm saying it's inaccurate. I'm
Yeah.
saying it's inaccurate.
When
So
we look at that, like, you gotta remember, like, the price of a renewable energy certificate is embedded in the price of the energy. So yeah, it looks like he left those embedded rec prices in those numbers.
possibly.
Yeah, so that's what it looked like to me, just quickly. And when we look at the month, you can't separate the rec management from the energy management. So if you look at a month like January, by the time you look at what you've sold to the pool, even at a loss, and then you manage your recs and what you're going to retire, what you're going to resell, we typically end up, and this isn't just RMLD, all MLPs end up about even or a little bit in the plus side. And that's what we're designing to do. That's how we're designing our portfolios to do that.
So quick question on that. So right now we're 100% hedged, right?
No.
But what's our percentage, right?
Well, if you want to look at, so, you know, as of right now, we're 80. So for the year, right? Any month will be different. It varies, but for the year, currently the snapshot is we're at 88.6, 89% hedged.
89% hedged. So the
Target's 90.
So was that the right decision? Getting to that point, was that the right decision? Because a lot of the stuff that we're hearing is saying, you know, but energy is cheaper if you're lower hedged. You were doing better. You know, you were okay. If I was down at 50%, what are other MLPs doing? You know, were they better at that lower hedge?
You
point?
can answer that
Let
one.
me
Go ahead.
just, yeah, let me
You
just,
go ahead and answer that one.
let me answer that. We've had like high-powered consultants look at this issue. And not when I was at E&E, but other places. I worked at a company that owned a big pump storage facility. So we were trying to figure out, when do we make our money? And we make our money on volatility, right? And many studies show that when you have a lot of intermittent energy, so you have a lot of wind-driven energy or a lot of hydro-driven energy, your cost of production is zero, right? So they're going to, on a variable basis, always produce because they're trying to get their rec. So they'll produce below zero. They'll produce to negative $30 if the rec value is $31. Follow me?
And pay
So we're going to see lots of negatives until we get a real cold snap, and then prices skyrocket. So you can lose everything you made as a producer by selling into the spot market on 7 days of the year when prices go to $1,000. So that's a market you don't want to be in, because if you're in that market, you're like a big financial house down in New York, and you're literally betting. You're making bets. Prices are going to be low this day. Prices are going to be high that day. And that's not the business we're in, right? We're in the business of reliable and matching up our budget to our supply, so we have good competitive rates.
Do you have numbers that you can put up on the screen that reflects the math that you're talking about, that says that math is wrong? I mean, you're saying that it's wrong, but I'm not seeing your analysis.
So I don't know how that analysis was created. So the analysis I have is $408,000. That's the analysis that I have.
What is $408,000 is what?
So in those 3 months, right, we sold $408,000 worth of power back into the market.
Meaning?
Well, that's the question. What does it mean? So I don't all right. I don't know what this means. Okay. It's not valid analysis. So what I'm walking through you, Dave. So, at the end of the day, is the question wire wind? Is the question hydro? Or is the fundamental question the overall power supply strategy?
So
because our power supply strategy is awesome. And again, you'll compare it to any of the other ones, we have, I mean, again, they see more than we see, and they know our power supply structure is very, very good.
Well, I can't be in the middle of two sets of experts here because what I'm told, and he says it doesn't include the RECs, is these power that was sold, and that's the net loss as a result of the sale of 400 and change in March, something 300 and change in April, and 100 adding up to 900,000 in 3 months. Yeah.
Wait, sorry, Megan,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you a microphone.
Yeah. You know, and
Well, we would want this as the, someone from the IRD director, not as an economist, like, we're not talking in theory, right? We're,
Or you could sit next to
I
right.
think we're talking hard.
So-
Just grab
Yeah.
So I just want to say it's really difficult, or maybe it's not comparing apples to apples when you compare 1 year of a long-term contract price with a open market price. Because that's not how,
but that's not what we're talking about.
I think, well, the $1 million loss calculation, do you have any support, like how that's calculated? I think that,
Well, I'd like to call, if I could get Bill into the meeting, he's watching, he texted me, but that's ridiculous. We can't,
So we ought to talk about, so are you talking about power supply strategy, or are you talking about a position in 3 months? So at the end of the day, we look at power supply strategy over the course of a year.
all right, let me tell you what I'm
The real issue.
understanding. The real issue is, so I believe RMLD is way up high in the 90s as to what the overall hedge is. And I also believe that's quite much above other MLPs, like
Not true.
you manage Taunton, right? And they're in the 70s. They're in the 70s of a hedge.
Well, Concord has a lot of,
Taunton.
Who?
Taunton.
Taunton,
Yeah.
but Taunton has their own generator sitting right inside their service territory. They have a 120 megawatt generator. So Taunton's a totally different animal compared to an RMLD. But Taunton can afford to be less hedged because they've got the equipment right in their service territory.
In territory generation.
I'm not disagreeing that we lose money, but we know that. Everybody does.
Sure.
I guess that, going back to my question that I had in the prior meeting and asking for the financial analysis, is to try to understand what is the net impact when you say, okay, we lose money, but we have wins and losses and we come out ahead. You can say our power supply is awesome. Okay, but I think the ask is, what is the actual net impact?
we can
And if
show
what
that. We have
we're
the-
hearing is that the net impact in the beginning of this year was over $1 million loss, however we're measuring that. Please share, what is the impact
And-
from your perspective on with those pluses and minuses? And then I think the other question was, there was a question around this wire wind contract. Is this better or worse than the market rate? And the answer was, this is better than market rate.
We have that.
When in reality, maybe it's not better than
I
market
need,
rate.
I need to just say, and okay, go ahead, Ray, but then I want to just,
All right,
Yeah.
so my short answer to your question is, we have a profit loss statement that's prepared and audited. So money spent on power versus money collected by the customers, providing a net positive cash flow to RMLD. To break that down into individual contracts might be interesting, but they're all going to be
I'm not
variable.
asking for an individual
I'm just-
contracts. I'm saying, like,
So
could
what's-
we be better? My question is, could we be better
Well,
if we don't lose
all right, well,
$1 million
well,
on this?
but we also
so
save
here's my
billions of
second,
dollars.
yeah,
And that's the question. How do we
so
show that?
I think, so my answer is, on one level, you can look at a profit and loss statement, you can see money in, money out, and how you net. That's on overall, on an annual basis, are we losing money as an organization? Are we not losing money as an organization? When you break it down, which what you're asking for, can we do better on one contract or better than another contract? I think the answer is that's complicated. But like where I was going to go with my statement is, as you look forward to future years, where are you going to see the growth in demand? You're going to see the growth in demand in the winter, and you're going to see growth in demand at night. And what power supply will give you additional power at night in the winter? Well, not solar. No wind in power grid. Maybe we can draw more wind off the grid. But to have a little water company that generates power in the winter and at night, it would be a desirable thing to have in your portfolio. Are we making money on that right now? No. Are we losing money to the point that it's upsetting the balance sheet? I don't see it.
Okay, so
Now, can we do better? I think is your question. And are there ways we can find efficiencies in that?
I need to frame, because
I feel
we are all over the map here. And I just want to try to get us back to what I understand the issue to be. And then I just got a text that Bill is in the room. I want to let him in because you just told the public that he provided false information. So I'm going to let him into the meeting to talk directly to you.
I don't know what the. Okay.
Well, hold on. So that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
But first, I want to frame the question as I understand it, and let's assume it's correct, but it may not be. That in 3 months of 2024, ISO New England, because we bought so much power, had to resell it back into the market, and it was exceptionally high. And over 3 months, it was a net loss of $800,000 to $900,000. That's how I was told. I understand you say it's false or misleading.
I don't know the analysis.
Okay, hang on a second. Now, then the question becomes, we get a contract in front of us on July 25th. It's only 1 year of a new hydro. Clearly, hydro is flowing in the springtime. And if the numbers I just said are true, if they are, then one would assume you would look at, hey, we just lost $900,000 in 3 months because we had bought more power than we needed, and ISO New England had to resell it. And that was the net loss over the 3 months. If that was true, then you would want to say, hey, in July, should we renew for only 1 year? Because the place isn't going to be functioning a year from now. What's the financial analysis that says that's a good deal to do? And we're told it's a good deal. And we've asked you for that specific analysis on Wire Wind of what we're going to pay. And then relative to what just happened in the spring, if it happened. Okay. Please let Bill in the room, because I want him to talk to you directly. This is a public meeting of a public entity, and we need to have the conversation. And if it's wrong, it's wrong, but I'm not the expert. We have the guy who used to be the IRD director and used to run programs at NWIC. So he's in the meeting. So can you let him in? You called him a liar. Let's hear from him.
Call him a liar.
Well, okay. He provided false information. Okay.
I don't know the information provided.
Okay. Then I want to let him.
We're clear. No,
Okay.
we're clear. I cannot replicate what he said.
Okay.
But please
let him in.
your
Let him say directly, and let's get through this in 5 or 10 minutes. Okay. He says he's in the.
I think I'm in. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Bill,
can.
can you please respond to what you just heard as to that your numbers are false and misleading?
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't know where the $400,000 number came from, but I can say that we looked at, I was able to get the hourly data for the LMP pricing, and then looked at what was oversold into the market. There are, and looking at what the rec values were. So either with or without the recs, there were there was an overproduction of power, particularly. Actually, it was during all of 2023. Every month had oversupply in the power portfolio, not just due to Wirewine, but to all of the portfolio. So if you look at that analysis, it is overhedged. And when you look at the area chart of the total production each month to the total load for RMLD, you can see that they're almost at 100% contracted power over the course of the year. So that is not time dependent. And then when you look at the time series and you look at when the contracts are producing versus when the load is occurring, there is a pretty big mismatch. And I think that is the problem of being hedged to that level, is that you're worsening the oversupply during the oversupply periods. I think if you look at I think with the numbers I looked at through May, there was actually about 106% oversupply for the first 5 months of the year, and that that's what contributed to the losses. The other thing I think that contributed to the over hedging was probably the Hydro-Quebec contract that was signed late last year that went into effect the first of the year. It's hydro, but it also is around the clock supply, meaning it's flat. And that's around the clock 5.6 megawatts is going to provide about 50,000 megawatt hours of supply, which is about 7% of the total supply. So unless the amount of the load growth was over 7%, that was also going to add significantly to the overhedged position in the month. So that added to the overall losses. But again, the methodology I use is pretty simple math. It's looking at the time series of every hour of the LMP at the Northeast Mass node, comparing it to what the assumed contract price was, and that's where the dollar value came from. And as I said, the REC value would not make any impact. It does have an impact because some of the RECs are sold, but it did not make the difference between the number that I provided and the 400,000.
Just on that, this is Bob Castle, Bill. On that Hydro-Quebec contract, Hydro-Quebec is running out of water. So we did that contract because Hydro-Quebec now will no longer sell additional power into New England. They've made a policy up there to keep all their low-cost hydro, which is all their hydro, in Quebec. So we had an opportunity to get that contract done. So that's why we did that contract with Hydro-Quebec. That's actually a very contract. It's a non-carbon contract. The only other source of around-the-clock non-carbon megawatt hours is nuclear power. So that if you're using the Hydro-Quebec contract as like a bad example, you're just way off. You're just
but the question is, like, why would you, like, do you think it was a good idea to also add the Wirewine contract for a year in the year that you're also adding the Hydro-Quebec contract for the next 5 years?
Yeah, and you have an option to continue it. It's not a bad thing to do when the price of all the intermittents we're seeing are going up dramatically. So yeah, I do think it's a good idea, Bill.
Well, but none of the you don't need any of those in the next year, right?
Well,
I mean,
we brought this up when we were doing the Hydro-Quebec contract.
Well, we're saying it in the context of Wirewine. The narrow question that we asked, and we still don't have the financial analysis. Here you go. Here you go. It is the value of this $1 million commitment when we just saw. Do you disagree with now his math of the $800,000?
Yeah, I still disagree.
You still disagree with it?
Yeah, I think we're much closer to the 95% than 106%.
Oh, but
at it from January through now.
The 400,000, 350,000.
I disagree with those.
And 200. He just explained it. And Bill, I mean, I do want to keep entertaining this conversation
because in the ballpark, but I don't think he's drilling down enough.
Okay.
Get what the true numbers are.
Mr. Chair, we're getting to it. He said.
Well,
we're not getting anywhere.
Well, I disagree with you. I think we're trying to get it.
Then maybe you should meet with the department and have Bill come down and meet with the department and work the numbers in one place.
That was the invitation.
As opposed to coming.
That was my invitation. You sit there.
Coming through this form.
If you take it at a high level, right? Somebody externally is pointing out a potential loss. That potential loss should have been identified. Are we overhedged? Right? We're running it. Why weren't we aware? Why weren't you, IRD, aware through 2023? What I'm just saying, right? you're pointing up, I get it, but it's everybody, right? That there was a potential loss from a different point of view, right? And is the high hedging, is that the incorrect strategy, right? At that,
Great
that's,
question. That
that's
is a
the
great
incorrect
question.
strategy.
Yeah.
Then if someone had said, well, hey, look, we lost $1 million last year, and we're aware of that, which you're right, Bob. So different point of view, but the point is, if you had looked at that and said, oh, whoa, let's look at this, maybe we temper this down. Maybe we don't enter into this contract because it's not necessary for a year. I understand your reasoning behind continuing this contract is potentially I roll it over again next year, right? Because again, your point about hydro, but I think that the question begs the strategy structure is the question, right? That's the question. Was it the right one? You went this way. Was anybody back checking to make sure that was the right way to go? And I think that's what the big question on the table. We talk about this lost yes or no, but that strategy, that's the question, what there, but why was there no check on that? Right?
It's not that there's no check on it. There's no check. So we should walk through strategy again, because we have looked at power supply in this depth in a couple of years. We didn't do a lot of contracts last year. We did several, but not a lot. So it's a very good discussion. You guys can set policy. The strategy that we've been talking about is to go from 60% up to 90% hedged. That's what we did. Now you get differences because output is variable and load is variable. Answer your questions, Mr. Chairman. The value, so it's right there, okay? So the value of, if we were to take the output against the forward price curve for 2025, it's $71.60 a megawatt hour. Just take that number.
If you use the power. If you need to use the power. If you don't need to use the power and ISO New England is selling it back into the market as they did heavily in March, April, and May, then that analysis falls apart.
We need
So
yeah. So it'll be very important. As we said before, power supply has numerous variables. No,
right.
It does. So the sweeping generalization that if you have to sell it back, it makes it irrelevant is not, you need to understand the bigger picture.
But this is a narrow picture.
Just a second.
But what you're presenting here is a narrow picture. Yeah.
Well, you asked for a specific, so the analysis that
I get what you're saying.
We should, so.
I get what you're saying.
Hang on. We have NDAs relative to sharing pricing, first and foremost, okay? So that's one piece. So we ought to take these types of power supply detail discussions because we have lots and lots of analysis. We look at this literally every week. So we'd be happy to walk you through the detailed numbers. There's a strategy piece. Again, I serve at the pleasure of the board. If you guys to say, hey, we think the limit should be 80%, fine, we'll execute against it. My responsibility is to share with you and educate you guys what risk we are taking. So remember, hedging is an insurance policy, right? You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. Again, all of the things we'll talk about it in the next session and the session after. Then I say session when we talk a little bit about goals, etc.
Yeah.
We are able to be 55% retirement of certificates because of the structure of our power supply portfolio. So we'll walk through as many numbers as you want. I'll leave it at that.
Right. That makes perfect sense if you're only comparing it against the Ford Prescott. That makes total sense. The issue was if we were having to resell so much power in the spring, as it is evident that we did. And I think you even stipulated that after hearing from Bill, it's in the ballpark, those numbers. I heard you say that. And if it's in the ballpark, it was 400 and change, 300 and change, and 100 and change. It was like $800,000 or $900,000.
I think it's that close.
Okay.
I think we're probably within
it requires careful analysis, okay? And well, for somebody to take,
but then to go into a hydro, knowing that you just experienced, if it's a little different than that, it's a pretty large oversupply that had to be resold at a loss. Why at that moment would you go into another 1 year hydro and get yourself from 95 to 98% or whatever? That's all.
I just want to if you look at January, and I looked at every day in January, last January, it was on the cold days when RMLD didn't need all its power. On some of those days, we sold it and we made money. And then the month went on, there was a really warm week in January. And that's where the demand went down, so the load went down. And that's when we sold some back at higher numbers. But if you go through the whole month and you look at the buys and the sells, and then you count in the rec cost, we're right at budget. We're right at what we forecasted for budget.
Well, budget, sure. I mean, natural gas prices
Budget
were
doesn't have
low.
loss, actual versus budget.
It's part of the variable of the
Right.
market.
So,
You're right.
I want to add that, when you think about long-term power supply strategy, it's really about the willingness to take the risk. If this commission decides to take the risk of the open market, that's a decision. It's about,
You can decide.
because every time when you make the decision, you're looking at the future,
Right.
which nobody knows what the future is. So last year there was oversupply, partially because we're not fighting. It's the weather, it's the climate. It's a very wet year, so hydro production was much higher. It's like it's supposed to be 10,000, it's 15,000. That's like 50% higher production. So in the spring, yes, probably everyone who has a hydro contract has oversupply for that estimate anticipated production. But basically it comes all back to, if you think about strategy, when you make a decision, it's to take a risk. You either take open market risk or you take the contract risk.
right, but it's oversupply is what we're talking about.
Hindsight is always 2020. So it's always good. We do track all the historical prices. We do look at that. And actually, Bill, if you're still here, I think your analysis is actually different from our analyst's analysis I just looked at this morning. So it can all have really different analysis and projections, but then fundamentally the decision is a judgment call, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent. So I just want to highlight that.
Yeah, I'm still, but, and one point is that, a 1 year extension is not a long-term, hedge, right? It's just for
Bill,
the,
your
for the
issue is
year.
wireless? Is that your fundamental issue, Bill?
That's the question you were asked.
No,
Greg,
is that the
was by
question?
the
Is that the
board.
issue he has?
The issue that we've narrowly asked you was to defend the wire wind contract, and it's a 1 year extension. And
In a nutshell?
Yeah.
It's below the forward price curve. It gives us an option. I mean, the numbers are right here. So,
Right, but I think if you looked at when, even if you looked at the year before, when it was producing, when it was expected to produce, if you did that analysis before, you may have not entered into that contract.
see, I wonder who was, we'll come back to that in a minute.
Well, I did not present the wire.
I just want to say, just like, if you looked at the last 2 winters have been mild.
Yeah.
So you would think the forward price curve would be predicting low prices going into a third winter, but it's not. The forward curve today for the winter is $133. So that's telling you that experts think we're going to be paying much more this winter than we have in past winters, even though we've had 2 mild winters in a row.
So to answer your question, Dave, we haven't finalized that contract. We are looking, so weeks ago, we scheduled a meeting with E&E to look at our power supply portfolio again. We're looking at the forecast. We have new information right now. The key thing is that if we don't do that contract, we will never see it again. And that's part of the equation. It's not big. It'll be literally $250,000 for the entire contract. Just so there's a big picture here. I'm happy to, we should do an executive session to get into more details. I will make a commitment to all of you guys that every time we get together, we'll take 15 minutes to learn more about power supply together. It is changing massively. What used to work in the past does not apply to the future. That's my commitment to you.
And just a reminder, as I said at the last meeting, another hydro contract, we were quoted $90. That's even higher than the forward curve. That's a real quote. That's very high. So compared to the wind price, the wind is very competitive.
Yeah, and I'll just, we've been looking at other projects. New wind for a 25-year contract is $100 to $110 a megawatt hour. And, we did the Western Maine contract at $78. So you can see prices are going up for new projects. New solar we did a deal, a gravel pit in the low 70s. We did a 50 in the 50s before that, low 70s. Now, if you want to do big solar, $90 to $130. And New York did an offshore wind auction, and it came in at $155 a megawatt hour.
Yep.
Prices for new renewable energy is skyrocketing.
Sure.
That's why you grab what you can now.
But Bob, you don't grab more than you need, or you end up selling it at a loss into the real-time market, right?
Bill, unless you take that long and you trade it for somebody on a short. So you know as well as I, this is ridiculous.
That's selling a lot.
This is
Yes.
absurd.
Can I speak?
Please,
Because we're getting way off and it's becoming again, who he said.
we
he
can
said.
move on.
Yeah,
It's either move on.
go
I
out of
think
order.
Bob made a very interesting comment about the strategy. I think we should go look at what the strategy would be, is the correct strategy in place. Ray at our last meeting talked
Thank you.
about, we have experts. And that he
No,
trusts
it's a
the
good
experts to
conversation,
do what
you
they
know,
want.
I mean,
You should
You
get to
know?
the alternative.
But,
If
you
you're
know,
not, how much you're gonna,
And
Say it.
just how much you
I
can spend if
question,
you're not.
I also question the use of your expert, quite truthfully.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not-
You're gonna have a year like
Yes,
last year.
go on.
it's gonna
Yeah, yeah.
be
Could
wet
we
and
take
cold, and you're gonna
item
come
9
over, and then
out of
next year
order?
it could be 100 degrees every day.
Yeah.
Nothing, you're gonna be buying it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
$1,000.
Yeah, so he's,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So let's.
That's why we're not buying it now for the future. We won't buy it if it doesn't make sense for now as well. That's
Okay,
Thanks.
let's go item,
You want to go to number 9?
let's go item 9.
Okay.
So Mike can.
Thanks.
Poor Mike.
Thank-
been
thank
sitting
you,
out
Bob.
there.
Sorry, Mike, we would have done you first here.
good luck, Mike. You got a nice.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks. I'm gonna keep my quick, so don't worry about
Wait, Mike, are you doing, 8 too?
He will do 8.
Okay, sorry,
We can switch the order.
Describe doing overtime snapshot, but that actually is like.
Let's do 9 first.
Let's get 9 out of the way
9 out of the way.
first, okay?
Straightforward.
Alright, so the first one is on the bucket truck. So we had put out a bid for a bucket truck replacement. We got 2 prices, one from Alltech and one from James Kiley. James Kiley was a high bidder at a little over $31,000 more than Alltech. And the reason why we selected James Kiley is because well, one is Alltech gave us an estimated delivery date of 54 to 57 months for the truck, and also they had a lot of stipulations in there saying adders if certain dates weren't met. So it really wasn't a fixed price contract. It was all kinds of adders that they can't just sell us. They can't guarantee that price taken out that they quote us. So we selected Kylie, and they were within our spec and within our requirement with delivery date.
Okay.
I think the biggest problem with Alltech, the service like Eversource and National Grid, when they buy a truck, they're not buying 1 or 2 trucks, they're buying 30, 50 trucks off of it. So they'll meet their demands, but when we buy 1 or 2 trucks, we're kind of throwing in the back, and
We're small.
yeah, they're not really looking to. But it's 4 to 5 years for a truck. Alltech.
Want the motion, Mr. Chair?
Please do, yeah.
So this is the bucket truck, right?
Yes.
Move the proposal IFP 2024-31 for one parents, the number 1 and the parents bucket truck 40-inch with trade-in to be awarded to James A. Kiley Company for $347,696 pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 164, Paragraph 56D, on the recommendation of General Manager.
Second.
I'll second just with one edit. I think it's 40 feet.
What?
3 inches, but
To 40 foot.
40 feet.
40 feet?
It's a little mini, it's a 40-inch truck, it's all.
I collect toys, what can I say?
That's friendly
I
edit.
collect toys. The only question I have is the trading value. What shape was the vehicle they're getting traded in?
That's 2010. So
We're getting value for that?
there is a value. I don't know if they
Not much.
yeah, 2,500 what they quoted.
We've been before, we had Truckgate there for a while, so
That's right, we did.
we had Truckgate. We just want to make sure we're getting value for what we're trading.
Well, as long as it's being disposed of according to the updated policy, then
It
it
is.
should be,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
The proper marketing.
Proper procurement.
For those of you who were not around with Truckgate, a truck got sold and there was a complaint that it was not sold for the correct value. The truck did not-
$50.
The truck did not run, needed new
Was it 40
transmission,
inches?
Was later sold for $17,000.
and there was a whole investigation by the finance committee. Because somebody had complained.
Yeah, it was all included with the bid process.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's fine.
Voting?
Did you second it?
I
Yeah,
seconded it.
okay, all in favor?
All right,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you. And, second item was, recloser that we were purchasing, put out to bid. We had, 3 bidders. It was, G&W. And Wesco gave us 2 prices. So the lowest bidder was G&W. The only problem with G&W, they didn't meet our spec when they, submitted, their spec for the recloser. It didn't have, we requested, 6 CTs. It only had 3 CTs. It didn't have a control cabinet. So Wesco submitted 2 bids. One of the bids, had a control cabinet, but it was spec for aluminum cabinet. The bid that we'd like to select is the second Wesco submittal, and that had the 6 CTs in a stainless steel cabinet, which is our spec. So the bids, G&W was the lowest bid, $208,000. Wesco, the aluminum cabinet was more money, $232,000. The middle bid by Wesco was $216,720, and we'd like to select that bid.
Okay, go ahead, yep.
Move that IFP 2024-30 for ABB Grid Shield 15 kV recloses be awarded to Wesco Distribution Inc. for $216,720 pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 164, Paragraph 56D on the recommendation of General Manager.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry to keep you up.
It'll be here for the next discussion.
Do we wanna go to,
Item 8.
someone else?
So Mike and I are gonna walk through overtime. Overtime is a topic that we've been actually analyzing and working on for a while. I'll walk through just some quick definitions. Planned and unplanned are the 2 big categories for it. Planned consists of we say planned jobs requested by customers, storm standby, heat standby, which is storm related, planned customer outages, etc. Also tied into the plan is under our existing contracts. If we have a contractor crew in place, which we do, we are committed to offer 8 hours to each lineman for that. So that's a piece of it. We also are working on a 4-day work week. We're evaluating that. We haven't finalized it. It has a lot of benefits, but it also has drawbacks because it draws higher overtime. So we'll talk about that in a little more detail in terms of different categories and some numbers. Control room is the other piece, and this is a situation that we had last year as well as this year. We have been running a 3-person crew. We've recruited several individuals. We've had a couple of people that transferred to other departments within RMLD. We are supportive of that. But what happens in the control room is that which is a good thing, we allow qualified individuals to staff the control room when we don't have regular staff. And so we've only had 3 qualified instead of 5. The challenge when we have a non-control room operator staffing that room is they get paid at time and a half. It's overtime for them, and they tend to be paid at a higher rate because they're linemen, for example, or engineers. So that control room piece is a noteworthy piece. We're about to have 4 people qualified. We hired a 5th person. Actually, the offer was accepted today, interestingly enough. But it takes 6 months roughly to qualify that control room operator. So the control room is a, I'll say a known problem. There's another element which we'll talk about in a few minutes with capital. You'll see in a few minutes, planned is over or will be over budget. Capital is under budget. We still have a fundamental issue that we're working through right now. So in terms of storms, you'll see a more detailed piece here in just a second, but early part of the year, January, February, we had quite a bit of storms. We'll talk in more detail. We've had new hires, so we've actually beefed up our line crew. As you remember, we had the rodeo. We have a very strong line crew, which is good. You'll see that the number of projects that we've completed so far this year is significantly higher than 2023. So while there is a higher overtime, the amount of work that we've gotten out is significant as well. We're still doing some additional analysis on it. Yeah, go ahead.
I see the mutual aids up there. That's usually reimbursable.
It's very reimbursable. Yeah. So that flows. Yeah. It is there.
Tracked in different buckets.
It's different buckets. It's netted out of these numbers, but you're exactly right. Yeah. So we've started participating in mutual aid, which is a really good thing. Good for training, good to be part of the broader team to help our neighbors, particularly north in this particular case. The reason why those product complete is like we put in their reliability. Remember, we've talked over and over again. Our goal is reliable, low cost, non-carbon. Lower numbers are better. So 23 and 24, our performance in terms of reliability is excellent right now. So part of the reason by making sure that we are working on our network, our distribution network, is to keep those numbers low. Overtime comparison. So here's some numbers going across. We got planned and unplanned. There's different slices of this. We're working on making it easier for us to do the analysis on overtime. But this is one cut, planned and planned and unplanned. In the far right-hand column there, you'll see a difference just to the left of that, 2024 through July, and then 2023 through July. So this is meant to be comparison. Both the numbers are the first 7 months actually, of both 2023 and 2024. But you'll see 2024 is much higher than 2023. And in the top line is primarily, and the unplanned is slightly lower, but the real driver is the plan. So we've got in the red numbers, July 24. So you've got these different blocks. They're paired up. January 23 to January 24, next spot. So 168 versus 150, 168,000 in plan versus 55,000. That's a big difference. You can see there the note, January, we had 3 storms in the same week, resulting in about 65 hours of overtime per person that week. That was a big, big issue. Again, lot of storm in the January timeframe. February, you'll see the same thing. It's not quite as significant, 68,000 versus 97,000, a $30,000 difference, driven primarily by a 2-day storm. As we get into April, 89,000, these are the big numbers, 89,000 to $157,000, another storm. And then June, we actually had some heat standby. So there was you guys remember, this summer was hotter than usual. So we are tracking back to why we have it. It's still a big number. So there's a reason why it's,
Well,
go ahead.
the right now, like compared to budget, let's just call it 1.15, right? Now what for total for the total through 2024, right? So what's that relative to our budget for the year, right?
Our budget, our budget's gonna be roughly about 1.2 million. So we're gonna,
So
at the rate we're going, we're gonna go over budget.
Yeah.
We're already over budget on plan. Now that's unplanned, Bob. That's just a fair statement. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's not a problem here. There is.
Yeah.
But in this particular on the plan piece, and it's how we're covering it. And we'll get into a few minutes with the changes we're gonna make.
Yeah, but like unplanned is unplanned. I understand
I would
that.
argue that storm standby is unplanned.
Yeah,
Well, but that's where I'm going.
The problem is like some of the buckets, it's like big buckets. We need to break it down to smaller buckets. And the system right now that's set up is not set up that way where storms stand out and you see like,
Yeah.
you have to go through like hours and hours, like everything to
So-
dissect this.
So let's just say unplanned is storm, right? But plan,
Well, not right now, so I would say you
Here, this now is unplanned.
We're just trying to
Night,
good point.
half-hour
We're just trying to, so it's consistent. We left it in, you're right. We
Right,
left it
the way you're tracking it, right, have to track it now, it's considered planned, but I mean, it's not really planned. I mean, I know you, like, the day ahead, you say like, I'm gonna keep some people, so it's like
what we do.
planned, but it's not really planned, because you don't know what you're getting for stores for the year, you know?
No, it should be storm.
Yeah.
Like, it should
Or-
be
yeah.
But-
heat standby or like a wind event or snowstorm,
the-
it should all be in those categories.
the big change, right, between 2023 and 2024 at a certain point was the schedule. Right? You went to 410s.
Absolutely.
Like I've said it before, this is an operational 24/7, 5-day a week operation. When you go into 410s, it does not work for an operational based team. And then the other item, right? It's when you bring in contractors and you're bringing them in, you got MOU, whatever you're gonna call it, right? When they're working and you're working, right? You do the work, you bring them in when there's extra work, right? I understand that it's work, but your fundamental structure of using them on a consistent basis, right? That's where your guys gotta be more productive than the other guys. And then the other, I mean, I don't know where to put this one, but I keep hearing the word rest time, right?
Oh,
Coming in.
that's right. It's rest. I don't know where you're hearing it from, but
Well-
that doesn't move this needle.
Well, it moves the needle because all it becomes is a sick buyback monster later on. It's the same exact concept that and they'll say, well, I won't do your overtime. I'll do rest time. You just have to be extremely cautious
Agreed.
of introducing that concept in because it becomes a bear to manage. You have to think of things that every day you're trying to play an overtime. The first thing you think of is how much rest time is someone going to get because they build up huge banks, right? It just
So
becomes
rest time is actually calm time, right? It's
Yeah.
just call it something different, because rest time and where I come from is you're home sleeping because you worked all night.
Right.
Yeah, so we have.
Work between shifts. I need
Yeah.
8
We're
hours
just talking
between
about rest
shifts.
time, so we have a temporary rest time agreement. But there's no bank, no quarter bank to build on it. They go home.
Your caution is very appropriate.
And
We're taking it seriously.
And if we got forced, we had to keep that guy, we had to pay him there's no bank for the rest. So there's no quarter bank for that rest.
Yeah. because
That's all the temporary agreement we have right now.
So-
And that's basically as an incentive, so, if you have guys working, you meet like, at certain days, you wanna make sure people respond at nighttime.
oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
all.
You
But
ask, and
but there's no line on bank for that, quarter bank for rest time at all. The comp time is in the contract, the 4 hour, if they work somebody out after 16 hours, which, it's something we gotta live with in the contract right now.
I just think there's a there's a direct correlation to the schedule change to the amount of overtime that's pumping up, and that's gotta change, right? I mean, that's just you learn a new system. Okay, this is how I get it. This is how it works, right? I understand that, but that's it's just a direct result.
So I'll come to lessons. So I'm with you on lessons learned, right? And you'll see that in the middle, right? Further refine the work schedule, right? We're trying the 4x10 and we're, what's working and what's not working. So we're with you on that one. So,
Yeah.
so the feedback is warmly received, right? So this is, these are the things. So before we go into this, right? There is the productivity, right? Of stuff we're getting done. So we're getting a lot more stuff done. And that goes back into transformer replacements, pole replacements, things that we're doing to update our network. And that ties back to reliability. But the point you're making, which is go back and look at your 4x10s, which is very good feedback. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now. The other elements is you can see right here, these are things that we're in the process of making changes to, right? So additional charge codes, so we can get a little more detail, retraining the team to make sure they're doing the proper time recording. And this goes back to what Jason was just mentioning, planned versus capital in particular, because capital is below budget, right? So net, we still have an issue, but it's not as extreme as we think, because we have to get the capital piece in. We're doing more monthly analysis in terms of the trends, which will allow us to do that. We're going to change the approval process and the schedule, the approval process and review for the work schedule, which ties directly into the 4x10. We got to make better decisions in terms of when we're allowing for planned overtime. That's a whole nother piece of the equation. And then we're changing the software platform that allows those upper items to happen, which is the SpryPoint system, because we have this custom system that, anyways, it's got its own problems. And then the material tracking. So that, but in the middle there is your key 4x10. So that's something that we're gonna, and again, we purposely put it in as an MOU. It's not structured in, so we can undo it at any point in time. And we're looking at this right now to say, hey, we might need to make a change.
If you go back a slide,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
and we're looking at pole sets.
Yeah.
So in 7 months, we set 17 poles, and then last year, and then this year we did 96. How many of those by contractors or internal crews? Like all these is that total volume by everybody or total volume by contractors and internal crews?
We have 4.
Yeah, one over.
We have one contracted crew.
But
on the overhead, and then we have 2 underground crews.
It just, if a job gets bid out for a large job, a large feeder job, is that in there? If you're a big pole set job, would that be in that number?
Yeah, those are total numbers. Total projects.
Total project.
Yeah, but, and your point's well taken, but remember, there's only one overhead crew in that mix.
So what I'm saying is, we're looking at total productivity for contractors and internals, yet overtime is only based on the work that they do, right? So your productivity number, is it coming, those total numbers are contractor whole sets and contractor tickets, and like engines tickets, services, are there numbers in there? Because I can't imagine that our productivity has exploded that much in 1 year. That's
You're presenting this in the context of an overtime explanation, and it makes it seem like suddenly more productivity is coming from staff who are getting overtime, but this is from contractors.
Well, no, that's not from contract.
so this is all internal.
Yeah, overall. So the part of it is, the Friday is planned work. So it'd be capital work that'd be on projects like pole replacements, transformer replacements, a capital type project. So this, I think where the difference is here, like, you see the pole transfers, I think those are set and transfer. And I think versus, the 96 is a new set.
Because our capital budget was underspending.
That's correct, yes.
So we're underspending.
But it's always
Our productivity and these numbers are saying our capital program is overproductive. Our capital budget is underspent, but these numbers say that we're doing unbelievable. Right now.
So just remember, so take a step back.
Yeah.
We are not concerned, like, overtime is not in the level of control that we want it to be. One of the things that we look at is, so what are we trying, how are we trying to manage? So there's things that in the next section that we're talking about what we're changing to manage. So the 17 to the 96, remember the way the line crews work, and the majority of this cost is all line crew. It's driven by the tickets that the engineers set. So you want to look at the total number, not any individual lines, because we might have, clearly we only did 17. Well, I have to go look at from January to August, right, of 2023. There's only 17 sets. That doesn't mean that's all the pole sets we did, but we did other projects as well. The point being is that overall, we're getting more projects done. That's all this is trying to say. And that ties directly back to reliability. And we're not throwing money away. We're not getting, people aren't just sitting around, resting in their trucks, not doing anything. There's stuff that's happening. That's all this is trying to say. Your point is right in terms of the 4x10, right? That 4x10, there's pros and cons to it, but from an overtime perspective, it's a negative. And that's why we're going back to say, do we end that program? I mean, it's exactly the right, I'm with you 100%, Bob, right? Because 4x10 might not be the right scenario for the line crew.
You have a question regarding these numbers. Now, tickets, they could be more than one pole on the ticket, right? A reconductoring job could be 1,000 feet. It could be 5,000.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're going by number of tickets here for any of this, whether it's transformers, poles, reconductoring jobs, I mean, in 2023, they could have been larger amounts of work on one ticket. And then in 2024, it was maybe smaller tickets with less on it. I mean, you don't know by looking at the numbers. All I'm saying is like, these numbers don't necessarily indicate the amount of work that was done in 2023 versus 2024.
Directionally correct. They're not, I can't do ratio with them. You're exactly right, Jason.
Because it just depends on the size of the
Yeah,
job and the way that, and how the work order was written. Like, certain engineers break stuff up into smaller chunks, other engineers might break stuff into larger chunks. I mean,
So the numbers are misleading.
it's not, this, I don't know if you can drive a lot out of the numbers because.
I did tickets more than the equipment is different. The equipment's equipment. So if you replace it, you didn't, or you set it.
so the equipment's not ticket, it's an actual piece of, it's literal equipment.
Yeah, those aren't all tickets.
Okay, so for the poles and stuff, and the transformers, you can like, but the reconductoring though, I don't think you can because you don't know how long the reconductoring job was. Like, is that spans?
That wouldn't be in there. Doesn't look like.
Because reconductoring jobs is
100 feet
15
wide.
to 94, but reconductoring could be 1,000 feet, it could be 10,000 feet, it could be a couple hundred feet.
17 polls in 7 months.
No, I think the only question there is.
But those are jobs, right? That the engineers set. So it's not like, it's not
Like
like.
those poles or jobs, because that's
I
the,
didn't do this, I didn't actually do a spreadsheet, but I think, like this, I get the numbers, but I think the touring two could be pole replacement transfer. And the 17 is actually new set, like
Yeah.
a secondary pole for a server.
or extension.
Mike,
something.
you didn't do the spreadsheet.
Well, I didn't draw these numbers.
Okay. So that, I think what I'm seeing is highlighting and yellow highlight 13% more on tickets. But tickets, as Jason said, could be everything from a tiny thing to a massive job. So it doesn't really mean anything, but it's presented as if it does mean
Oh,
something.
I don't know.
That's not what he's saying.
There's one way, this is one way to look at the data, and if you have more detail, you can break it down and provide more detail. This is telling, all I'd say here
Which
is,
is- right.
this would drive the question of, we really need to drive into some more detail to be able to figure out if this actually is more or less.
Right.
I don't want to like.
Which is what this is all
But
about
it's
here.
presented as if it's more, but
Well, I
And even
can
like the-
tell you, Chairman, that there is more work
not to
getting
call
done.
me chair. Yeah, but go ahead.
Mr. Dave.
Yeah,
So
whatever.
I can tell you that more work is getting done,
Yeah.
but this is why we're trying to dig deeper into it, so we can actually quantify and work through and say, so. I'll tell you once again, right, overtime needs to be better managed. These are the things we're doing differently. 4x10 is a piece of it, the way we're doing the tickets, the way we're coding, it's all part of it. It's an important piece.
Can I ask just a question on that? What is the oversight process for overtime? Like, who approves it? How do you decide that that makes sense? And then following that, was 4x10 all going to be a trial? And was it communicated as a trial or?
Oh, it's clear, yeah, it is a trial. So
And so when are we making the decision on assessing how it is performing and making either the decision to make it permanent or to change it?
we're not making it permanent. So so we work in a unionized environment. Schedule is something that we are unlikely to put into a contract. So that's a very strong statement that I just made.
Schedule of what?
So to answer your question, 4x10 is on a trial basis right now, and it's done through an MOU. For the line guys, it goes through the end of the year.
Okay.
We can stop it at either party can end it at any point in time. That's what's written in the MOU, and it's specifically written not to be part of the contract. So to answer your question, we look at it on a regular basis in terms of, well, periodically look at it and say, how can we make it better? And part of it is, are we getting more work done or not? Are we able to get the crews to come in when we need them to come in? Because back to Bob's point, we need 24/7 coverage. And there was a time when it was difficult to get people to come in, and we would go through a call list 2 or 3 times. Not acceptable. And then there's the cost of it as well. So we're reevaluating. So we're coming to the end of the summer, and it's a perfect time to do a transition because we're about to start the school year, literally. So the answer to your question is it's not permanent. It's unlikely to. I'll stop right there.
Okay, so the first question then, who is currently kind of approving or making decisions on when overtime is required, how much?
It's a combination of the general line foreman and the tickets on the engineers. Each week, so twice a week, we go through a scheduling process. And we decide what jobs need to be done depending upon the needs of the customer or whatever the other needs are. So it's a weekly process in terms of when's gonna be overtime, if it's not gonna be overtime, or how much are we gonna? That's that process.
So we know ahead of time how much it's gonna cost before it happens. Unplanned.
Well, you definitely, like that's make up over time for the contract to be on the system.
Mhm.
So we know a couple days in advance because they have to give us a list who's available for that overtime.
Yeah, so work to be done. Clearly.
One small question, are we, as an organization, do you base yourself, let's just, they used the word Taunton before, or another thing, they're like, they have 35 linemen and we have 40 linemen.
We have 23.
23, is it all kind of, are we understaffed, overstaffed, or based on?
We are
Is it based
more
on
properly,
square footage?
we used to be pretty understaffed.
Yeah.
We're more fully staffed right now, online crew.
Okay.
A couple of the drivers too, was a control room with shorthanded 2 guys, so that was always being filled by overtime. And then, the other driver was, the way the schedule is for the troubleshooters on the weekends. It's 24 hours of built-in overtime week for coverage and troubleshooting as well.
That's a close schedule. You gotta get the bodies. We gotta get the bodies in.
Wes,
Yeah, get them in.
yeah, we gotta have coverage, which goes
A
back.
couple things there, right, they're not really controllable.
You gotta get people, you gotta get the people
That
hired, right?
was kind of part of the problem where like, everything's grouped into a bucket of plan, but it's not necessarily, that's not right, the right term for it. Like the storms should be separated as storms, like patrolling coverage should be separated, a separate bucket, so like different line items should be like a little clearer. So it's something we're gonna work on. So it'd be like spelled out a little clearer.
Work to be done. Anything else?
Thank you, Mike.
Next up. Yeah.
Item 10.
Yep, moving on, yep.
Meant to be a quick check-in. Quick snapshot. I'm gonna do this in 5 minutes. I'm not gonna do a big long one. So right now, RMLD, we consider ourselves a winning team. We have very good external reputation. First 6 months of the year, the team was engaged and motivated, confident, etc. Being part of a winning team is good, and that includes the board as well. The whole team, under the leadership of the GM, is to focus on the mission. And the mission we talked about before, reliable, low-cost, non-carbon. We are doing a really good job in terms of fulfilling our mission. As we talked about before, reliability. We have low outage occurrence. Lower numbers are good, right? Better than regional and national average. Our restoration is fast, right? Better than regional and national average. We are, as we mentioned before, trying to accelerate our reinforcement of our network, so that helps increase the reliability of our system. So we are doing a very good job on reliability. We moved to the diamond level of the RP3. We're getting good. So customers are very pleased with the reliability. Low cost. We have very strong financials. Our income statement and our balance sheet. We manage cash very carefully. We look at it every week. Every month, we look at our power supply rates, specifically fuel and PPCT. We are able this year, because of the work that we've been doing so far this year, to actually dampen the increase of the August bills from what it normally would have been. I checked with customer service. There were very few complaints of high bills in August. That's very common because of July, the August bill is because of July load. Kilowatt hour sales are typically highest in July. We just received, again, S&P analysis. We are AA minus. They are particularly interested in our cash management. APPA's calculation is 90% between 90 and 100 days of cash on hand. We're 120. S&P has us at 178, different calculations. Our residential rates are dramatically lower than IOUs, and we're mid-fleet among the MLPs. Commercial industrial rates, we are at the lowest third of the MLPs, and we're dramatically less than the IOUs. So from a low cost perspective, we're doing very well 2024. The third mission is non-carbon. And you guys remember the analysis that we did. We're able to be 55% certificate retirement in 2024. That was enabled by our power supply portfolio. You know, certificates is a key part of that portfolio. And it's several $1 million of impact in terms of reducing our fuel costs based on the way we structured that. Our non-carbon position is well positioned all the way through the mid 2030s. So big picture, we're doing very well as an organization. The goals, this was a vertical sheet. Just to make it easy, I've split it into two pieces, 1, 2. You know, I won't spend too much time on it because I really want the feedback from you guys. I tried to do 2 stars, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. I think vision, we continue to be very good. So that item A and item B, in the context of us changing our in-territory generation strategy, we're going to update the strategic plan in terms of how we're looking at that between now and the end of the year. We were very successful and good in terms of engaging legislative. We did a series back in January, February, March of legislative meetings, Zoom meetings, etc. Well positioned there. Personnel, right? We hired new ops, Mike sitting next to me, new IRD director, internal hire. We actually brought her in early in the year as an assistant director and moved her to the director of IRD. We made an internal promotion on the engineering side to fill that position. So again, continuing to upgrade our leadership team. The intern program, I'll put that at, 1 out of 3 stars. I'll probably put that as a 1. Item E there, negotiate mutually beneficial union contracts. That process has started. Our goal, there's a lot of work to be done on that. Contracts take time. Complete the transition to the new work schedule. Again, that's MOU based. We're gonna refine how we do the line work. But we have different groups and different departments in terms of how we're looking at those. Testing the semi-annual performance review, that was meant to be for my team. So I have not succeeded on that one yet. You'll see in a minute that that's one of the areas that I'm saying that I need to perform better on. In terms of the customer section, each one of these, I won't go through everyone individually. I should say actually, revamping RMLD.com. We had done some work at the early part of the year. As you guys know, we had to make a tough decision relative to how we staffed communications. You saw from my note, we have a new marketing manager position. She has started, she's hit the ground running. So I'm confident that we'll get all of those customer items done by the end of the year. I wish they were done now. We mentioned the customer portal as well. So all good stuff. Recruiting large new customers. That's always in process. Some of our customers that we thought were going to be bigger 2 years ago are finally ramping up. One of the 3D printing companies is expanding, which is good. I'll get feedback from you guys in a few minutes. Platform, selecting the new AMI vendor and establishing milestones. We're actually in the contracting phase of that. We did select a vendor, the top 2 actually, because we aren't going to, we're going to keep one in reserve in case we can't get the contracting done. That was a well-run procurement process, which was great. Land, you guys know that I give you guys intermediate updates on land. We can get more details at the right time. So that's going quite well. Internal data analytics, it's going well in terms of load forecast. We haven't been as successful yet in terms of applying that to operations. Some of the things we talked about on the overtime, we'll focus on that piece. Funding, we specifically, when we put this together at the early part of the year, we are anticipating doing some significant debt funding. We won't need that right now. However, we did map out and we took initial steps relative to bond, meeting with both the town and MWIC on several occasions. And again, like as you mentioned, as you remember from the last meeting, we've got our first grant. We've done $48 million of submissions, but we got the first one back. We're hoping the other ones will come through as well. Power supply, right, there's a strategy to, RMLD owned and territory generation. We've talked about that and we're actually implementing that. The MOU for in-territory, load generation asset, that was a carbon capture fuel cell. We've paused that purposely, so that's, U is paused. The in-territory generation projects for the various schools. I met with, the town manager and the assistant town manager in Reading relative to two of the projects. I'll be meeting with the head of the school committee the next couple of weeks on that one, so that moves forward nicely. And then W is the long duration storage projects. Those are on schedule to be installed at the end or first half of next year. So that's a quick summary in terms of goals. I'm feeling confident that we're going to hit all these goals. In terms of areas for improvement, so this is my feedback on me. Establish key metrics beyond the basic actual versus budget and dollars per megawatt hour. Need to create a, we haven't finished this yet, but I need to make sure by the end of the year, if not before then, a management team dashboard. Data analytics. Again, this business is increasingly data centric. And part of both of those is, what are the cost trends? Pam, you and I talked about this last year when we first got started, but cost trends are across all different categories and make it easier for when you guys look at the warrant approvals to see that. I am committed to create some SMART goals for both my direct reports and myself. These are broad goals purposely, but we'll put in place, financial goals, et cetera, as we go forward into next year. The other element is project schedules. One of the things we learned by doing the carbon capture fuel cell project, a lot of work was done on schedules and analysis, et cetera. But schedules, budgets, and milestones is part of that program. We're going to try and apply that to the other projects that we have as well. And then the last element is something for me, but more timely formal reviews to my reports, and specifically the reports that are reported to me in my acting role. So when I was acting director of operations before you got here, engineering. So I am not fine. I have not got through all of those reviews, so I'm behind on that. So that's another element that I need to finish on. So that's areas of improvement for me. So that's a quick snapshot. Big picture, RMLD is doing extremely well. We're meeting the goals that we set out, the GM goals, but I've got work to do in terms of my performance, and I've got some specific things. So I'd love to hear your feedback. So that's my report. So I'll transition to take feedback from you for intermediate feedback in terms of the general manager's performance, my performance specific.
So I got a couple. So we talked about reliability.
Yeah.
Reading hasn't been hit by a storm and a significant, I don't know how it hops over our territory, but it hops over.
What's the hills?
It goes up the Merrimack Valley, pounds North Andover, and then moves out. But reliability is something to be taken with luck, right? That storm hits, that microburst hits here, that our reliability numbers are great because we haven't been hit in years, right? That's part of it, right? Part of it. Storm hardening is a portion of it. That's part of it. Kind of just going back to a couple of items, we always talk about low carbon in our projects that we have going on. And we had mentioned at the beginning of the year, just make sure that you have to stay focused on the ones. There's a lot of stuff out there, but we got to stay the ones that you have. I think we went too big picture, right? I believe that, we paused the carbon capture fuel cell. We had to do that. And we have a lot of other items that are out there that just aren't progressing. And I don't think they're gonna progress, some of them, because the projects we need to focus on are the ones, the substation.
Yep.
And AMI, right? Let's get those done. Let's get those projects done. Let's complete those. Those are the status reports that we need. How are we doing with the vendor? Where's the implementation? That stuff was 2 years old, right? And 2 years later, but we're not that progressed on a lot of those projects. Or seemingly, because we don't know.
We'll give you reports. Good.
Yeah,
good
but
feedback.
I'm just saying, the substation's a huge reliability portion of this network, and don't see it, I don't have any clue to it. AMI, that's the key to time of use, right?
Yep.
Where's that? Now we're talking 2025. So I think that's part of it as well. We talk personnel. Personnel, that's bad, right? There's been 20 people that have left in here, and retirements and terminations, resignations. There's been 20 people that have left since, let's just call it 2 years, right? 8 of those were basically senior management folks, high level people, right? Some of them were terminations, some of them were resignations, right? Huge amount of turnover, right? In here now, right? That's massive. That's, a quarter of the organization, the institutional knowledge that was here is gone, right? We've been without an engineering operations director for a long time. That institutional knowledge walked out the door, right? That hasn't been replaced. That's key to making sure maintenance programs get staying on track, whatever they are, the programs that were in place that were running, I don't know where they are, what they are. So Hamid came in sometimes, it was quite boring sometimes, but it was effective because you knew what was happening. Right now, we have no clue what's going on. I don't even know what's going on with those projects, so I don't know we don't know what's happening with those. But I just think that there's a lot of room right there, that the personnel thing is the biggest one. That brought you in to change the culture, right? That was one of the big items, right? And there's a mass exodus out the door. Maybe not all related to, there's people taking opportunities, but there's a lot of changes going on, and that has to stop. That shoe doesn't fit, don't throw it away, right? Sometimes I think there was some better ways to handle things that could have maybe not ended up in terminations or resignations, but there's a lot of stuff that quite the feedback that I get from ex-employees, it just not comfortable sometimes hearing it, right? That's real, right? I just want to put that on the table. It's just not something that's been acceptable. I don't want to listen air out of a balloon, but I just
I want to just back up that one point of at the end of the day, and I think I've heard Commissioner Porter say it too, the place is as good as its employees and how the employees feel about where they work and how comfortable it is for them in the work environment. And there's a lot of indications that the work environment is difficult for a lot of people. And I think the word is exodus of these numbers for a stable public company with great union jobs that doesn't typically have a lot of turnover. The numbers of departures are dramatic at RMLD over the last couple of years, and a good half of them are people who resigned. And so I just want to echo what Bob said. That's the most important thing, and it feels like that's not. Like he said, that we wanted a culture change, and if anything, it seems to have taken a turn, to the worse. And that didn't come up anywhere in your self-report of that turnover and what your take is on it. But it's a big concern of mine, so I just want to echo that particular part of what Bob. I have other things, but I just wanted to back that one up. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
thank you.
My comment, separate from that input, the schools and the projects, the solar voltaic projects, the electric projects that are happening. I was at the last couple of meetings. Appreciate that Molly was there. I think through Molly or certainly RMLD, whatever presence that takes. There's still a lot of people on the building committee and in town that are bound to be fossil fuel generating facility. Even though the consultant comes back and says electric facility is long-term economically viable. And I think what the town needs to hear and see is the is a real physical presence, again, through Molly or through whoever, that RMLD is behind that, those options and can really deliver, for the town on that aspect of it. So my encouragement, to you and giving Molly the support and producing the kind of proposals that the school board needs to see that, no, this is not abstract. This is not pie in the sky. We can deliver on this. If you want us to own it, we can do it. If you want us to, just go some other route, we'll do that. But I encourage a more proactive presentation on that. There's still people who love propane generators, and we can do better with batteries if we let them know that that's the way to go.
Good feedback.
I was still, for the board, I will still maintain a role on the sustainability committee and interact with those committees. But that's the feedback on that. I think we need a stronger presence there.
I'll fully agree with that, Ray. I'll just in general, what I had a hard time with this, Greg, was understanding kind of, there's a lot of work happening on these. And you mentioned the 1, 2, 3 star. I don't think you went through individually on each of them, but I just was taking notes as you were talking about it. It's a lot of meetings, engagement, in process. I guess what I try to look for is where are the results, and I know we're not at the end of the year, but there's a lot that is to say we're on track for all of these goals. There's I don't see a lot that are like, that's done, check, you know. And usually at this time of year, if you've got a list of 25 goals, you've got over half of them done. That's what I would expect in kind of, you know, my outside of this room life. So I guess I have a little bit of concern about whether we're actually going to hit all these goals. The other thing I think about is kind of customer obsession and just making sure that we're constantly thinking about the customer. And I was really concerned about the fact that we had, you know, one resource gap that led to, you know, your comment that, you know, most of the things underneath customer were not, were delayed because we didn't have a communications person. You know, we didn't have the ability to communicate or expand, whether it's our website or our customer communication. We know we have gaps in our customer communication. I think it's great that we're starting to think about it, and we heard about it earlier in terms of, you know, rethinking some of those programs. But again, I hear a lot of, we're doing analysis, we're looking at it, we're going to make changes. You know, we need to start actually making some decisions and making those changes versus just analyzing them. So I definitely had some, I definitely have concern that we're not going to meet some of these goals. And I guess I'd want to understand kind of, I guess we need to think more about where we're really at risk of missing for this year.
Thank you. Anything you want to add, Phil? I have a few things.
Want to reserve comments. I agree with some of the things some of the people have said, but I'm going to reserve comments at this point. I don't have any particular comments.
Okay. So I have a few things, I guess, and just kind of to set the stage. I mean, some of the things we're talking about are things that, you know, we didn't know at the beginning of the year, or the result of data or information that really have only come through recently that caused some concerns. So, you know, one is, I do think that it was a good conversation earlier. I know it was a little awkward to have an ex-employee in the room. I think it was a good conversation to have. And I did hear the gentleman from E&E, Bob, as he walked out, said, you know, those numbers were approximately right. So what it means is that those in the beginning of this year, that there was a selling of a loss of power that RMLD had bought of 136 grand in January, maybe a little off, 50 in February, 420,000 in March, 371,000 in April, and 163,000 in May. And even if those are a little off, I mean, that's $1 million, more than $1 million, most of which was in the spring. So I continue to be concerned that the wine was promoted and encouraged for a 5-0 vote in that context, and that the defense you give in terms of a financial analysis is that it's less than the forward price curve. But that's not the point. The point was that we had sold a lot of power at a loss just this past spring that should have informed I think, had it been considered and brought to us, would have resulted in a different decision. So I consider that a very fundamental, problem. And again, the numbers could tweak a little bit, but the discussion didn't leave me any different than where I started, to be honest with you. So the exodus of employees, I think, is really overarching. I think the overtime discussion, I think we saw a $300,000 overage that we've once you got through your presentation. The real reason was the 410s, which is a thing that was known for a long time, but the presentation made it seem like it was from storms or something, or extra tickets, and I think the presentation was a little misleading, and I think the conversation resulted in more of what the real issue was. So now, and it's sort of a minor note, but in another way, it's not a minor note, is how our peak awareness program of the summer sort of fell apart. And on June 20th, and okay, there can be a glitch with an invoice. It happens, right? But June 20th, we had a meeting, and I'd emailed you 3 days earlier saying, it's going to be 100 degrees. Give us a report on what you did for demand response and notification. And those mass emails that we spent a lot of time assembling to notify people of the dip and they take action is a key part of what we do. And it didn't go out. And that's okay. Mistakes can happen. And you said something about it being a password problem or an IT problem. It was 6 more weeks until it somehow surfaced that it was just an unpaid invoice that in a day could have been fixed June 21. And it wasn't until August 2 that another peak email came out, because the invoice, little tiny small dollar invoice, got paid. And it's okay for an error to happen, but the whole board's sitting here telling you on June 20th, 6 weeks go by till you fix it. And in the whole summer of one of the hottest summers with all these hot days. So that to me is like, if that can't get done, even though the board told you, what does it say about bigger things? And I think, so that was a kind of a red flag for me about how things are run. I think overall, we didn't talk a lot about the how much time was spent on this carbon capture fuel cell. A wonderful idea, but how much effort went into it when there was not land, there was not approvals for land, there was not a hint of regulatory approval being in the offing. And I mean, and then not even anything I don't think on the carbon capture side of that there really being a market, that there was like none of these legs of the stool were there. It wasn't like one of them, like none of them were there. It was like a straight 4-0 vote against this. And it was like, it's not that we don't like, or that I don't like big ideas, but the level of effort relative to how speculative it was is, again, for me, a concern. So these are some of my concerns, and they're pretty serious. And I don't know if anybody else shares or has a sense of how deep these types of concerns and the ones you guys mentioned are they, but I do have questions about, the leadership of RMLD right now, based on all of that. And I don't know what any of you guys, do you guys have more fundamental, do you have or not? I mean,
it right now, Greg, I honestly, I think with the personnel changes, I think that what we're seeing what we should be seeing for performance, I believe that right now I'm troubled with the leadership that's going on here. I am.
Can I make a public comment or a comment?
Yes, please.
I know you see you're talking to a lot of former employees, but I think it might be beneficial to talk to some current employees. Like, from what I hear, and I'm not just saying this as, rights assistant, I hear this from people who are unaffected. They think, some of those terminations have been positive, or that leadership is doing a good job. So it's great to have those opinions, but maybe open it up to some other people too. I'm not saying me, I'm saying anyone else. Or come in and see how the days go.
Yep. Chairman, board member.
So yeah.
I'd be very open to that.
Take a commissioner to work day.
Love to. Well, I mean, I guess I wonder, kind of a sense of the board of how serious do you guys, you know, we had a lot of serious concerns, and how, you know.
I don't know where you're going with how serious. Those are concerns. Certainly, we have the right to ask the questions. We have an obligation to ask those questions and get answers. I'm reluctant to make quick judgments in terms of leadership. I think we need to work through those questions and get guidance on how to do it. If it means more program management training or more HR training or whatever other skill training we want to do. I think there's a myth that, oh, things aren't going well, I'm not getting the answer to the questions fast enough, therefore we've got to make some major change. I'm very cautious about reaching that conclusion too quickly.
Yeah, I'm on the same.
But it's fine. It's fine to say, you have some questions or issues, you didn't get a response quick enough, but be careful how far we take that. That's
we have a process, right? Part of our contract with Greg is a process.
I appreciate that. We're reviewing goals. We're giving feedback. I was asked by the chairman, where am I headed? I'm only expressing that we don't rush to a judgment or reach a hasty conclusion. That's not the direction I'd be heading in this.
So I just, part of our contract with Greg is a very defined stepping process, right? So I think if we either enter into that or we don't enter into that part of that process, right? Because that's the only way we can have these discussions. Basically, like any one of us being put on a performance improvement plan, you know, at our places of employment, you know, if we want to see certain things or hear certain things, I think that's what we're going to have to ask for, right? I think my huge concern is personnel turnover, right? It's just, you can't build if you can't hold, right? And you can't build if the people that are here are leaving, right? And I just think that is again, it's a huge element. And to me, it's a flag, you know, it just things come up. And again, you make a great point, Erica. You know, I am getting one point of view, right? I'm stuck where I am, you know.
And I would just add to that is, I think, you know, 75 people, 75 different opinions, right, on what's happening. An attrition number is a pretty clear metric of how engaged are the employees, and that number of 20 is really surprising to me, especially because I vividly recall my first meeting as a commissioner hearing that the only turnover is retirement, and if we've gone from that to 20 people,
only 2 of those are retirees, I think.
In a year.
2, yeah.
That's a really surprising, concerning number.
Well,
for me,
I wasn't sure what the conversation would be like at this, but based on this, you know, I have prepared a motion to take action, and would you all like to see it and look at it and consider it?
Yeah.
So this is, and we could do with it what you want, but this is an action where you have at times, Greg, taken, you know, decisive action very rapidly, right? And sometimes we need to do the same, and that's what this motion would allow us to do. So, okay, so I'll pass this out, and this would allow us to.
Why don't you read it first?
Well,
you should read it first. Why don't you take a look at it, Bill?
Yeah, so this basically takes steps under your contract, pass them down to take action to which would be what Ray has indicated he doesn't want to do. But if you guys want to take action, we can do it with this motion. So the question is, has anybody,
I'm not ready to do this, Mr. Chair, to be honest with you. I think this is premature.
Mhm.
You know, slinging this on us at this point in the evening. I'm not, I don't agree with this completely. I think, you know, we need to, Greg has got the feedback. He needs to respond to the feedback. And then I think maybe something like this may be appropriate if judging from the feedback we get. I just don't think it's appropriate at this point.
I guess I just have a question on process. So two pieces. One is you asked for us to read it. Do we need to read it, given not everyone is?
well, if there's if somebody wants to read the motion and second it, then it's a vote. If it isn't, it isn't.
We need to read it just to have a discussion about it, right?
Yeah.
The second piece is, and I'm still learning all of the processes here, but can we actually have discussions about something like this without formally entering into a
This has got to go
process?
to executive session. This should be a discussion. We're talking.
No, it's
yeah.
performance related.
I guess I'm just trying to understand how do we have a discussion about this particular issue without going into the.
I would recommend that we talk to legal counsel, you talk to legal counsel as to what the proper process should be.
But who?
Right.
How can,
Gotta be some legal counsel somewhere that could.
we had this discussion the other day that we're not capable
Right.
of doing that.
Right, we're not allowed to hire
We're not
legal
allowed to
counsel.
hire or talk to anybody because it's not, we don't have the power as a board to do that.
I guess
So-
I guess that's where my question is going is, you know, whether this is the direction that we ultimately want to take or not, is there a way for us to continue to assess these concerns without this process?
I think, like I said, I think it should be, the general manager has heard our concerns. We should ask him to give us feedback back on those concerns. And then we go from there. I mean, I didn't question whether we can even do this, because this is not on the agenda.
Well, the agenda
This
does
is
have,
not on
the agenda does have, response and action, potential
It's
action. items.
not, I question whether this is even legal.
Okay, so,
This question, you know, because it's not on the agenda.
so why don't
Mhm.
we take 5? Health break, whatever you call it, we adjourn and we go to executive session.
I think you either, it's a performance-based action. It is what it is.
I'm gonna offer something up as a, potential motion. Right? And, in accordance with section 7.1 of Greg's contract, right? We, are gonna look into Greg's performance, right, at this time. And I think that I gotta word, I'm trying to word this in a certain way that gives us the ability to have a discussion with you about your performance as general manager, right? And that's according to our right in this of section 7.1 of the contract.
Yeah.
That would be my proposed agenda item for meeting to be determined. And I think the next item on that, actually we can't because it's not an executive session.
Right.
Oh, we're not in executive
So
session.
repeat again what you're.
Are you reading the motion?
I'm gonna read it. The Board of Commissioners directs the chair to prepare, um, a review of the general manager, in accordance with section 7.1 of the general manager's contract. Right? I think, what do you wanna?
Can I,
Yeah.
do you want me to just read what?
No,
We can read-
don't read it.
Yeah.
And
No,
then-
I-
and then
I-
we
I-
can discuss.
I think
Well-
Bob's motion is the motion that should be made.
I'm heating Phil right here.
Right.
I am.
You know, I've been through a termination of general manager. It's a legal process. It's a legal process. My time, I've been through it. It's a legal process.
Yeah, and it's,
So I think.
the
but I
motion
think
sets, the
motion-
motion would set forth the precise process that is laid out in Greg's contract. It exactly comes from his contract. It
But I
is
think
totally.
But I think Bob's motion would be the one that we should vote on, not this one here.
I'm not sure what the difference is, sorry.
Well, I think it doesn't get into, like the definitive. I'm.
I fail to understand the motion that Bob's trying to craft, which is a discussion of the goals that the general manager is trying to meet, and he put forward what the goals are. We gave him feedback. I don't see why that isn't the discussion that we're asking to have. We don't need a motion to achieve that.
Right, and that's, I think, you know, that's what I'm saying. I say Greg has got our concerns. He needs to come back and respond to that. I don't think this motion is even appropriate at this time.
I did, the issue that we have is not, we can't ever get traction, we can't ever go forward when we go into our executive sessions. We can't get out of them, we can't get through them.
Either read it or don't read it, is my view. If you don't want to read it and you don't want to do it, then okay. But
yeah,
either do it or don't do it.
I think we're going down a very bad road right now. And this is something we're gonna regret later on. I know this motion.
And, okay.
I'm in the indecision at this point.
So, at this point, maybe the CAB should consider adjourning. And that we would move into executive session. I make the motion to move into executive session.
I would just ask if we want to take action or not. If you don't want to take action, then
I don't want to take action. I don't want to take action. I think it's a very bad road to go down at this point in time. And to spring this on at whatever time it is right now, I don't think it's appropriate. You sprung this. This was not on the agenda. It was not in advance presented to us. You know, you're asking for a snap decision. You know? And I'm not ready to make any kind of snap decision on this. So I asked that the CAB, you know, move to adjourn their session. And then I'm gonna read the motion to go in executive session.
Okay, and we're prepared to adjourn, Chief. So you guys want to read the motion?
How many current employees have been spoken to about
we're not doing the public session. We're not doing public comment right now. I'm sorry.
Zero.
So nobody's reading the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. You got the adjourn.
Move that the Citizens Advisory Board adjourn regular session.
10 more seconds.
I second.
We're gonna go
Jason
into
Swallow.
executive
Oh,
session.
yeah, sorry, second.
Sorry, second.
Yeah. Very frank.
Ken Walter, aye.
Tim Woods, aye.
Jason Swallow, aye.
Okay, the RMLD Board of Commissioners go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 164, Section 47B, exemption from public records and open meeting requirements in certain instances to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigant position of the public body and the chair so desires to discuss reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints of charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual, and for the approval of meeting minutes and to return to regular session for the sole purpose of adjournment.
In favor?
Mr. Pacino, aye? Okay.
Yes. All good. Everything else.
Still recording.